live stream. We have here a lot of guests from different teams. We will be talking about different topics, and welcome everyone who joined us here on the call also. And of course, we'll start with a word from our CEO, Thomas. Thomas, are you ready to speak? You're muted. Okay, I guess. Sure. All right. So, starting off, we will discuss the different. I'd like to list all the EIPs that are included in this hard fork. So we have, of course, the star of the show, 4844, and its accompanying EIP, which is 7516, Blob base fee opcode. Some other EIPs that are for the EVM, like beacon block root in the EVM, transient storage opcodes, more efficient and cheaper data copy with memory mcopy opcodes, and self-destruct being only destructing in the same transaction. Some also beacon chain improvements, like perpetually valid signed voluntary exit with the EIP-3044, and we have EIP-7045, which is increased speed of block confirmations, and EIP-7514 adds add maximum epoch chum limit to limit the amount of validators exiting and entering the beacon chain. So starting the discussions, we will start discussing 4844 for a while, and we will start with some questions to our core devs, and the core devs who have joined us. So how did EIP 4844 came to fruition? How did Blobs and the idea behind Blobs came to be how it is today? Maybe Marek or Lukasz would like to chime in here.
So if I can chime in here, so of course Blobs came as a way of scaling Ethereum, right? So the first idea of scaling Ethereum was called danksharding. And danksharding was a very complex idea of scaling Ethereum. So Ethereum would have beacon chain as it has now. It would have the execution chain as it has now, but there would be multiple other chains. I think the idea was to have like 64 chains that would talk to potentially to each other in different ways, and all would be integrated on the beacon chain, and it was extremely complicated. And it turned out that it's not as flexible design as it could be. So it's has narrow path, right? And it's extremely complicated in research, right? So the research for that was going a long time, and it was obvious it would be very complicated to implement, right? So the question was if we would be able to do that. So in the meantime, is for example, the zero knowledge proof research was going on and all of that, and there started being ideas to, okay, why do we have this homogeneous design where we can just go distribute it, right? We can actually allow anyone to create a chain. And why do we have it like in protocol here, right? Why don't we have something more flexible? And especially people wanted to do that, right? So that's why how all the L2s are started growing. So the idea was also what can we do in quicker time to leverage all the Ethereum consensus rules, right? Which are backed up by pretty decent value right now. So how can we leverage that while allowing those L2s to grow? And the problem was, of course, that L2s needed data to be stored, to be validated, to be guaranteed by the Ethereum. And currently they used call data for that. And this is pretty expensive because call data wasn't designed for this. And call data is currently being stored in history. And storage is probably the most expensive thing that we can have in blockchain. So the idea was to do proto-danksharding, right? So it's a evolution of the original design, but a lot of simpler one, to add blobs that are they are guaranteed forever, but they are stored only temporary on Ethereum chain. So in this way, we could provide a simple and fairly quick solution to address the L2 scaling. So that's how it came about. And it's actually the naming Proto-danksharding came up from, I think, I'm not sure, but I think it came up from, of course, Dankrad, which was a researcher. And I probably think it's also from Proto Lambda as well, the name Proto-danksharding, though Proto might mean different things, but that's my guess.
Right, right. Thank you, Lokesh. And uh, I would like to also welcome our guests. I'll come to you, Marek. I'd like to welcome our guests. We have Ben from Coinbase Cloud, and we have uh, Gajender. Uh, we have Nixo from ETHStaker. Hey, Nixo. And we have Declan Fox from Linea. I hope that I'm not butchering anyone's names. So Marek, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to add that Proto-danksharding is compatible with next scaling solutions. So first of all, after Dencun, we will be able to increase number of blobs in next hard forks and scale more Ethereum in this way. But also, the changes will be compatible with future full danksharding, which will rely on data availability sampling.
Right, right. I would also like to allow other guests that I haven't mentioned. There is Darren Langley from Rocket Pool. Hello, Darren. And please, if I forgot anyone, please say hi.
Hi.
Martin, right. You were with
Yes.
us from the beginning. That's why I forgot about you, my man. We have Martin from Pinax, core dev with the Graph Foundation. Thank you for being here, Martin. Yeah.
Pleasure to be here.
Right. Great. Going back to the subject. So I heard that our blobs are versioned. So what's up with versioning blobs? Like, can someone explain that part? Martin, would you like to chime in about that? Why the blobs are versioned?
You mean me?
Yeah, no, Martin.
Okay.
Bro.
Okay. So
I think you're muted. Maybe he can't unmute. Give him a second. Okay. Well, we'll get back to you, Martin, once you can unmute, hopefully. Okay. Well, let's checking. Okay, another question about blobs. So, like, blobs are
I'm
Stefan?
sorry, we have some raised hands from Zach and from
Oh,
Gatinda.
right. Zach. Sorry, I just noticed. Yeah, go ahead, Zach, please.
Sure. So yeah, basically the reasoning for the version hashes is it creates a nice separation from the commitment used versus what is represented on chain. And so basically the way the version hashes work right now, you take the hash of the KZG commitment and then you swap that first byte to be what the version is. In the future, if a new commitment scheme is deemed to be more efficient, or in the post-quantum world, if KZG ends up not being what we want to use, we're able to kind of separate it out and update the commitment used while still retaining this 32 byte hash on the execution layer.
Oh, very cool. So, what hash are we using? Is it Ketchak?
So for the version hash, I believe it's actually the SHA-256 of the KZG commitment.
Cool, cool. So just to explain what commitments are, when posting blobs, you post a lot of data, and when you post this data, a KZG commitment that is basically the cryptographic proof that these blobs are on chain now is posted alongside of them, and if when we need to prove that on the ETH1 or like the EVM side, we can only access the versioned hashes. Is that correct, Zach? Which
Yep.
are basically the hash of these KZG commitments.
Yep.
Cool, perfect. And like so like how does the KZG help us in checking the availability? Can someone chime in on that? I think we have many new guests joining. Let me mention them before continuing the discussion. We have Dimitri from Lido. Hello, Dimitri. We have Philippe from Noses. Hi, Philippe. And congrats on a successful hard fork of Noses. I think we have also Armagan from Noses. And congrats for the successful hard fork. Yeah. So going back to the questions. So like we have the blobs. They're pushed onto the beacon chain. So Marek, if you can tell us how are these blobs availability checked against their what's the mixture between the blobs availability and KZG commitments? What's the idea there? Can you explain that to us?
I'm not sure if I'm right person to do that, but right now, data availability, every node will have all the data, but with future full danksharding, we will rely on data availability sampling. So only part of the nodes has data, but entire network have full data. Yeah, but this concept, maybe it will be better explained by someone else.
Right. So we have some CL devs that are lined up to join us. So hopefully we can we can ask them about that.
Hi, I'm Dev with Lordstar, so I can
right.
chime in over here. Yeah.
Please,
So basically,
go ahead.
Yeah. So when you have blobs, their commitments are included in the block. And what you can do is you can basically, so when they are included in the block and that block is part of the canonical chain, you are sure that the data of those blobs were available And basically what you can do is you can create proofs against that commitment, and using that you can construct the proof against the ancestor block hash of the beacon block. And now we have beacon block header also in execution state because of 4788. So I think one can easily construct proof that this particular block was available in the ancestor. So yeah, that way it can be done.
Thank you so much. I think we have Nixo with us here, so I want to use this opportunity to ask her some questions about the staking community and how they're approaching this upgrade.
Oh boy, pop quiz. So I would say that the staking community is mostly on autopilot. People are happy to upgrade their node. It's their vote, but it's all manual. People upgrade their node. We look like we're the last I saw, I think that we're in pretty good shape for upgrades. And the only thing that people are concerned about in the staking community is whether or not blobs are going to add enough storage to have to make them upgrade from a 2 terabyte SSD to a 4 terabyte SSD, which we are still not recommending because blobs are only on average going to be like 54 I think gigs, and at max 100. And so it's not actually going to add that much space to their SSD.
Right. But like, so some people were staking with, I heard, with 1 terabyte, so that's not an option anymore, correct?
No, I would not say that that's an option. Most clients are getting you above 1 terabyte now, so 2 terabytes is definitely recommended.
Right.
Yeah.
Marek, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to say that with 1 terabyte, I think it is possible, but not pleasant. So you have to resync your node many times, and with blobs even more. And for blobs, staking requirements will increase if we reach the target. So 3 blobs in 1 block, then it will be about 50 gigs on CL side, and there is extra space required for transaction pool on execution client side. It's about 10 gigs or 16 gigs, something like that. But the chain is growing as well, so yeah, it's better to have like 150 gigs.
Right. Lukasz?
So I will shamelessly plug in a Nethermind tech tip. So if you have 1 gigabyte, terabyte, and you don't want to, and you have trouble with potentially like Nethermind database going too big, etc., because Nethermind database is split between different folders and each is its own database, you can symlink parse some of those folders to another drive, and you can, for example, have 2 1 terabyte drives instead of 1 2 terabyte drive. So it's an easier upgrade and an easier way of doing things. So Google Symlink in Linux, how it does work, and you can like just link the path there to the original place, and it should work seamlessly. So interesting fact.
Cool. We have DC Builder who joined us from Worldcoin. Hi, DC.
Hello.
Hi. Good to have you, honestly. So so how do people expect how will this affect L1 prices? Like we say that 4844 is for scaling, etc. Will it have any effect on L1 prices? Anyone wants to chime on L1 prices effect of 4844? Marek?
Yeah, I can answer that. So basically, right now, before Dencun, users and L2s compete for block space, while after Dencun, we will have two separated storage. So we will have block space and blob space for rollups. So it means that users will not longer have to compete with rollups for block space. So we expect that it will decrease the prices, or blockchain will be able to handle more transactions. Basically, it depends on supply and demand, of course.
Yeah, sounds good. So it will have like a very small effect on L1 prices. Like they will have probably 10 to 15% more extra block space to fill with transactions. Which should drop L1 prices slightly. So how about fee burn? Does Blob fee also get burned with 1559? Or how do blobs affect the fee burn? Anyone interested in discussing that?
So there is basically, depending upon what the excess data gas has been percolating from the parent, definitely the blobs get priced, and there is blob base fee, which is basically blob base fee per gas, and depending upon the blob usage, that gas fee will get consumed and will get burned. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So for example, so you're saying that they'll follow the same rules that apply to the transaction-based fees, the normal transaction fees, correct?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So the base fee will so we will have more fee burn if a lot of blobs are there, which is making more ultrasound, Ethereum more ultrasound. And one last question about the fee is, how come blobs don't have it's their own priority fee? If yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, basically the priority fee, I mean, it's just like priority fee is just meant to incentivize the validator, right? To include the transaction. So it doesn't matter whether you keep it separate or you keep it the same. In the end, whatever tip you are going to pay is going to go over there.
Okay. Gotcha. Right. So I want to ask Declan, I think from Linea, what is he excited about most about 4844, and what are their preparations for it?
Yeah, so the obvious one is to enable us to bring down the actual transaction prices on L2. I still think we need to see how the fee market acts in reality. There's going to be some interesting second order consequences. Hopefully we don't see any sort of blob inscriptions or some crazy congestion that kind of bumps up the exponential price of blobs again. But at least for Linea, like our plan, so in a couple of weeks we'll be activating blobs. We're not going to be immediate, but we're pretty quick to follow. And I think there's some, at least for us, like there's some interesting gains as well around being smart about when to actually publish the blobs. So today, like for a rollup, most of the costs come from publishing batches of data. At least for Linea, it's like 99% of our overall L1 costs. And so now we have like two sort of fee markets and two timings to think about: the timing of when we actually publish the blobs, but then also the timing of when we finalize the proof, because Linea is a ZK EVM. And so I think there's still a lot of like, optimizations post 4844. Essentially, rollups become like commodity traders. And so thinking about it like that and the timing of when we finalize and publish blobs, I think that's going to be a really interesting area that we see post 4844.
Right. Yeah, totally makes sense. I mean, like even if the data availability layer is super cheap, there is still the cost of generating the proofs, running the L2 nodes, etc. And we have also Tugrol from Scroll who can chime in on this. Hi Tugrol, how are you?
Hello. I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for having me. Sorry, I missed your question. I had some connection
Oh, we were
issues.
just discussing what are the preparations that L2s in general and possibly Scroll are doing for 844.
I think the main preparation is just putting in the work to actually make both the circuit and the smart contracts compatible. So that there has had to we've done quite a bit of work on that, and also we because there were discussions at some point whether should we create a system that is adaptive to the price, basically like let's say if the gas for normal gas is cheaper than blob gas for some reason. Hopefully no one's gonna do, as Declan said, blob inscriptions, but you never know. We might get in a situation where blob inscriptions are a thing and the gas for blobs is more expensive than just publishing data directly. So we were playing around with the idea of maybe like creating an adaptive system where you pick whether you can publish blobs or publish data, but then at some point we realized that it'll just increase complexity. So we'll just hope that inscriptions are not a thing. And yes, so I think we're gonna be live with blobs in around 3 to 4 weeks. So we're not gonna be ready today, but there's still some small stuff left to do. And yeah, hopefully that will. The main reason why I'm personally excited, for example, is that it creates a fee market separation, which means that we no longer have to compete with general users. So like people trying to use Uniswap or just send ETH or anything else. And while I don't think it'll decrease the prices for like those kinds of actions, at least in the beginning, I think that it'll have like quite a noticeable impact on the prices that users on L2s are paying.
Right. And talking about posting data using blobs, how are like what exactly are L2s planning to post on blobs? Because like from what I know, usually a lot of L2s usually post transaction data on using cold data on Ethereum right now. But some L2s I've heard that they don't even post the transaction data. They just post like state transitions and proofs without posting the transaction data. So do these L2s require to post the blob transactions using blobs? Do they have to? Why do they have to? Or why don't they have to do that?
So for optimistic rollups, I think there's no other option. You kind of have to post transaction data. For ZK rollups, you have an option. So for example, ZK Sync and Starkware post state diffs, and us, Linea, Polygon are posting transaction data, and there are trade-offs to both. So with, for example, when you post transaction data, you're always assured that you can recreate that the state diffs and like recreate the state. Whereas if you post state diffs, you kind of trust that the proof system that you're using is correct and has actually correctly attested to the state diffs that you're publishing. So there's a certain trust there. And plus with transaction data, you can have faster finality. But then another trade-off there is for posting transaction data is that basically you cannot have you have to publish either full transaction data or compressed transaction data, which is likely in most cases more expensive than publishing state diffs. So there are trade-offs to both. I think everyone's just going to do whatever they were doing before. They're just going to publish it in blobs rather than cold data. But I think I don't see a reason why all of a sudden ZK Sync would switch to publishing transaction data, for example, or us switching to state diffs. So yeah, but I think one thing to note here is that you would still have to publish certain amount of data as cold data. So metadata, etc., for the validating bridge to actually keep track of certain things. So it's not like you're just moving all your stuff completely to the blob data, and that's it. You're never going to use cold data again.
Right. Thank you, Toggle. Marek?
Yeah, I have a question because we have DC Builder here, and I'm curious how 4844 will improve Worldcoin, because it's different perspective, up layer perspective. So are you guys waiting for 4844, and if yes, why?
Yep. So essentially, we are deployed on Optimism mainnet, right? So World ID itself, the main tree of World ID users, is essentially a Merkle tree of public keys of users that have been verified by the orb in this case. That tree lives on Ethereum, but we bridge the root of the tree to Optimism, and that's where all of our proof verifications happen. So every 2 weeks, we have this like grand distribution where people can verify a World ID proof and verify a nullifier. It just represents the given action that they're verifying. In this case, it's a claim of a grant, right? And we have about 2.5 million users that are active every 2 weeks, meaning that every 2 weeks, we have about 2.5 million gross 16 proofs that we need to submit on Optimism and trigger all of these like WLD token transfers to the user's safes. And we also do a lot of like safe deployments, a lot of transactions. And the thing that we do is that since we know that each of our users and each of the safes is a unique person, we subsidize all of the transactions for all of these users. And this turns out to be to like $1.5 to $2 million per month on just Optimism, essentially fees that we pay. And this is a lot, right? Of course. And so 4844 is going to reduce that drastically, hopefully.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
DC.
Can I have one more question? I'm curious
Sure.
about like Gnosis, because Felipe, I think you found one more use case for 4844, and I'm thinking about Blob FM. Maybe you want to tell something more about it?
Yeah, so well, basically we wanted to kind of play with blobs a bit. And the idea was to do something fun with it, because of course the main idea is to well, do scaling for Ethereum with layer 2s and that type of thing. But that's not fun enough, and that's not educational enough. And I want this to be accessible by everyone, basically. So we created blob.fm, which is a website, I guess, where you can post blobs yourself from the browser. Yeah, and we are currently working on getting it out for Sepolia and Ethereum. So that's what I'm working on currently, so that it's ready for Ethereum's hard fork. But yeah, maybe you can do a better presentation, like with showing the website, but a bit later, because I'm a bit too busy right now, sadly. So yeah.
How is 4844 for now on Gnosis? Everything works smoothly? Any hiccups or something?
Everything is working great on Gnosis. Yeah, nothing really to say on that side.
Do you know what is the cost of Gnosis to post one meme, one cat, let's say, on the chain?
Well, I guess we can abstract this to just say it's free, because we have the faucet even for mainnets, and it's probably a bit less than some cents or something. So yeah, basically it's free.
Right.
Go ahead, Ahmed. Sorry.
Thank you, Felipe, and thank you, Marek. So I think one question from YouTube that we have is asking about inscriptions, and are they viable on blobs, given that blobs expire? How will inscription affect the prices of blobs if they are viable on blobs? I don't see how they are, but maybe there is some way. Toggle, Declan, you want to chime in on this?
I think when it comes to inscriptions, we're looking for too many logical answers, where in reality, a lot of the use cases for inscriptions make no sense. So for example, at some point people are doing inscriptions on Solana, and like, why would you do inscriptions on Solana? So the same thing is here. Maybe it's not very viable, but I can bet that someone is going to try and do it, and hopefully it doesn't take off. But I don't know. It might have an impact on the prices for all of us, but let's hope that it's a fad that comes and goes quickly.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was gonna just
Declan?
echo
Yeah.
Toggle's point there. I think like with inscriptions on the EVM, it doesn't make much sense. And like people using it on rollups using state diffs as well, where you're really not getting the sort of security of the L1. So it's kind of a bit crazy. We actually recommended for people who were doing inscriptions on linear to try and use the event logs and had to publish like a whole piece to kind of stop people from trying to, you know, DOS the L2. So yeah, I'm a little bit concerned of like the same thing happening with blob inscriptions, especially if, you know, that leads to congestion and then rollups again get expensive. And I think as
Right.
Toggle mentioned, like having this mechanism to then be able to at some point choose to go back and post to cool data, because the inscription, the blobs get so expensive again. Like
Right.
I can see that absolutely happening, if I'm honest. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna. It was
Yeah, go
Oh
ahead.
yeah, I was exactly gonna echo what they were saying with like, we cannot look at that specifically from a like logical angle. I think people will just try to do stuff. This is what happens in crypto in general, and maybe just a little bit of a like I mean to talk about it right now. Maybe we should stop talking about it and stop giving people ideas. Because the ramifications, even though it's not logical, the ramifications that like it could be like, you know, folks can just like do this and it's gonna expire for a while, but they could massively do this and make it expensive, right? Which is gonna just be itself a meme.
Right. So thank you for chiming in, Ben, and I encourage all the guests to chime in right away and hop on the conversation at any point they feel like.
That's the beautiful thing, Ben. If we can think of it on this call, somebody's going to think of it on
Oh, 100%. 100%. So that's why I was like, maybe we should stop talking about it. No. No. But yeah, I was trying to chime in earlier on a couple of things, but I was having audio issues, so I do apologize for that. I do want to just briefly go back to a previous thing, if you don't mind, very quickly,
Sure.
because I'm Coinbase here, right? And you know, Base is a very big thing for us. So I do want to like mention that like Base specifically will be live on Blobs day one. We're going to do one day one activation for that. As you may have noticed, what's it called, like for the past couple of years, Base has been like actively like participating in EIP-3074, right? You know, delivering like working prototype implementations and you know, driving on some key issues and stuff like that. Just like extending the effort from OP stack, right? So just wanted to like you know, bring that up really quick because the other L2s got to answer and I was having audio issues.
Right. Thank you so much for the update. That's great. We have also Manny from Taiku. I know Taiku is not like mainnet yet, but maybe they are preparing for blobs as well. Manny, hello.
Yeah, but
Hey.
I've seen also Zach was raising his hand for a while, so
Yes. Okay. I'll get back to Zach. I'll get back to you, Zach, right after I say hi to Manny. Hi, Manny. How are you?
Hi. Sorry for the delay. We have a frame sequencing day in London with lots of layer 2 talking about base sequencing and everything. Yeah, so Taiko is not mainnet in mainnet yet, but we do plan to support blobs from the get-go, and we have internal devnet that gearing up for this week with EIP-3074 support.
Right. That's great to hear. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Manny. And going back to Zach, you had your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, there were a few things that I was kind of wanted to chime in on. So on the 4844 readiness. ZK Sync will also be ready from day one. We actually have a multi-stage kind of rollout strategy, which had started on Monday. So we released all of our code and our upgrades then, while still posting to call data. And then once it goes live today, it is just a simple configuration change. And even though our network will support 2 blobs within the circuits, we're actually going to start on 1, and it's for that we don't know how blobs are going to behave. Hopefully no inscription type things, although I think once people realize like, oh, 1 inscription is going to take a full blob and it's just not cost effective and there's only 6 blobs per block, hopefully that would die out pretty quickly. But yeah, once we see the market start to stabilize a little bit more, we'll be bumping up to include 2 blobs.
Right. Thank you. So ZK Sync is ready from day one to start using blobs. That's cool. That's cool. Thank you. So I was thinking about blobs and how they expire, and I was thinking like, how are L2s? Because usually some L2s depend on call data to sync, or some of them used to depend on call data to sync from Genesis or something like that. So how are L2s planning to deal with blob expiry? Is there any specific plans to have some backups of these blobs somewhere?
Yeah, I can talk for Linear. So like
Sure.
we're going to be storing backups ourselves just because it's so important that we don't want to rely on anyone else, at least initially, whilst we bootstrap this sort of peer-to-peer like storage for blobs and for the history. There are like many other services now popping up, and I've seen quite a few like this week reach out to say they're going to be storing the blobs and history permanently, which is great. So I think as this sort of ecosystem steps in as well, and we have like multiple different providers and P2P storage solutions like securing the history of the rollups, especially the big universal rollups, then that gives a little bit more redundancy. And as long as there's at least one, that can actually maintain the storage, and then someone can use that to recreate the state, like we'll be in a safe place. So I think it's a net positive to go down this route of pruning, and expiring the data for availability means, but then having at least it stored in some sort of decentralized storage system.
So you're planning to have P2P network storing this blob in Linea?
Yeah, we'll probably we'll use other P2P storage networks that are already available, as well as just like store backups ourselves. But as sort of systems mature and the ecosystems mature around them as well, there'll be many different like providers, so it becomes less of an issue to have to like maintain it ourselves.
Right.
So for the first year, I think it makes sense to store ourselves just to see what we have the capacity and just to see how things are going. One thing I realized when I was doing consensus development is that the community steps up. Like for Checkpoint Sync, I was really impressed by what the Histaker community has done, and then people trying to organize a self-creating page, and now it's being you have kind of an unofficial link in if client GitHub with all the checkpoint providers, and you also have teams like eStorage trying to provide this for users. So I think like as a transition period, storing for 6 months, 1 year makes sense, and then look at what let's say dedicated teams will come up. And then maybe pay or give grants to those teams for long-term storage.
Nice. And I think Toggle wants to chip in. Please do.
Yes. So I think you can imagine that you'll have like multiple paths here. An optimistic path, which is probably served through the P2P network of the L2 itself, and then you will have fallbacks added to that, connecting to like trusted RPCs or trusted block explorers, etc., where you can pull the data from. I can imagine a system where you have multiple layers of defense, and if one fails, you can fall back to another. Because one of the benefits of this happening on Ethereum is that Ethereum is super widespread and has so many different public goods and so many services that depend on it and kind of use it, are reliant on it, and so it's highly unlikely that you'll end up in a scenario where nobody in the world holds the data necessary.
Right, right. I also heard from the Graph Foundation that they're already have deployed some way to store these blobs. We have Martin from Pinax to tell us about it. Martin?
Yeah, we actually. Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, we have since yesterday actually. We're just waiting for the blobs. We have actually two solutions, and they're based on FiOS and substreams. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with FiOS and substreams. They've been technology built by Streaming Fast. So FiOS is basically like taking directly from the beacon chain all the data, extracts all the data, and then stores this in a specific substream. So that's where you can get like directly the substream. It comes with all the benefits that the substreams have. It's like transferable, you can transform the data to any data sync that you want. You can compose the data and you can parallelize the data. So it's pretty quick. But for those that are already used to subgraphs, we also have like a subgraph live. That's a substreams powered subgraph. So yeah, that's available already for Gnosis and Ethereum. And feel free to check it out. I can share the article with a blog with more information on that already. And yeah, any questions regarding this?
Sure. Thank you, Martin. We have also have Marius have joined us from the Git team. Hi, Marius. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Marius,
I'm
are we ready or not? Tell us.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're ready. We're so ready. We've been ready for a couple of months now, just waiting on the other teams.
Right, but that, like, how about
But not
people? Did they
Nethermind.
upgrade their nodes? Did they upgrade their nodes or?
I think so. The last time I checked, it was around 9,000 upgraded nodes, and it kind of depends on how you calculate it, but we have roughly maybe 15,000 nodes on the network, but that's like, I think that's an upper end estimation, and so yeah, a lot of nodes have upgraded, and I can actually put a link into the chat soon once the site loads, where you can see who has upgraded and who has not from the crawler. But yeah, it's I think it's going quite good. Yeah, almost 10,000 people have upgraded their nodes. So yeah, we don't know how much stake is behind that and how much stake is not upgraded. But at least from like the amount of nodes, it looks kind of good.
Right. We have also Dave, I think, from blob.fm. Hi, Dave. So Dave, so someone was asking me like, me as a normal user, how can I post blobs on Ethereum or on noses? And I think you have the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where Blob FM comes in, right? What's a little project Philip and I worked on. We actually wanted to hack on this at Istanbul, but blobs were obviously not around back then, and we finally got to it now. Maybe if I can share my screen, I can give a quick demo.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
If this works.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. So like the idea behind Blob FM was like to have like an easy way to illustrate kind of like blobs on chain. Initially, the idea was actually to put like radio on chain, which is kind of like a joke from the TV show Silicon Valley, where the VC becomes like famous for putting radio on the internet. So we wanted to put radio on chain. And so we actually have like these kind of like podcasts on chain. So actually, if you play these are actually live streamed from blobs. So if I like press play, the tab is muted. I muted it yesterday.
I see some numbers on the right-hand side on the bottom there.
Yeah. So because of course, like the blobs are limited to like 125 kilobytes each, the audio is actually split up among that. And you can see on the right, it's like buffering through all the blobs in which the podcast is split up to. And on the left, you can see like the blob you're currently playing through. So you're actually like live, kind of like playing live through these blobs as you're listening through this podcast. So that was kind of like our original idea to kind of like Blob FM is like a radio station on blobs. And so that's kind of like where we uploaded some kind of episodes. But then we had like this idea of like letting users upload some images and kind of like making it a bit more interactive. And that's kind of where we made this gallery to just allow users to like kind of upload. Initially, it was just on Chiado. And then yesterday, since the hard fork, we also have it on Gnosis chain, of course. And it actually creates a local wallet in your browser. And on Chiado, we actually have a faucet. So if you do it on Chiado, anyone watching or on the call, feel free to test it out. You can just open the link. It brings you to your wallet on Gnosis Scan. The faucet, I think on mainnet, it doesn't work right now, I believe. But on Chiado, it does. And then you can just send some DAI to this wallet, either through the faucet or on Gnosis chain, you just send some DAI to it.
So anyone who wants to post his memes into blobs can use blob.fm, right? Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you so much for this. So I guess L2s now have more competition because people will be posting memes on blobs. Just a reminder for everyone who's listening in, we are like almost 2 hours away, 2 hours and 2 minutes away from the fork. We will continue discussing 4844 for a while longer before jumping in and starting to talk about other improvements in Dencun, and then going over the Ethereum roadmap, watching the fork, and then hopefully discussing the coming up EIPs at the end of the stream. So going back to topic where we were discussing 4844, like I heard a lot in Istanbul. Before I ask my question, maybe Marek wants to say something. Marek?
Yeah, I want to say hi to Darren. I think he doesn't have occasion to say anything. Darren from Rocket Pool. Yeah, and maybe you can say us what are you waiting for in Dencun? Maybe it's not for 844, but other improvements are more important for you. So
yeah, definitely. So 4788, which is the beacon state route, is the one that we're waiting for. That is really big for Dimitri's. Dimitri's also waiting for that as well. So it's really big for staking protocols, decentralized staking protocols in particular. It makes our protocols incredibly much more efficient. We can reduce the number of kind of like semi-trusted or trusted kind of actions that can come in. So yeah, it's very, very important for staking 4788. Yeah, we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, just maybe for context for everyone, 4788 is about exposing beacon block routes from CL clients in EVM. So in this way, staking pools and I don't know, some restaking construction will know what's going on consensus layer side through smart contracts. Do you plan to use this EIP? I don't know. Have you implemented changes needed for this EIP in your protocol, or what's the plan, and how it will improve Rocket Pool?
So not yet, but we have designs in place that we will be testing once everything's kind of live. We have designs that we're going to we've prototyped them, but we want everything to be live before we actually start rolling things out. And there's a whole heap of governance in the decentralized protocol to kind of like get through. But no, it's going to be very, very good. Some of the improvements that we've made, they use kind of like state proofs, or to instead of kind of having to essentially trust parties to perform some things, we can now use state proofs, so we can remove those trust elements, and also streamline things. So, for example, one of the things that we have is at the moment we can't tell the difference between like a full withdrawal from the beacon chain, or like a reward distribution, like a partial withdrawal, in other words. So with 4788, we'll be able to tell the difference between that. So at the moment, we're kind of having to have like a smart contract per validator, which is quite costly for our node operators to create these smart contracts, because deploying a smart contract costs quite a lot of gas. So going forward, we'll be able to have one smart contract for the whole node that can do all of that accounting, and not have to create a smart contract per validator. So the efficiencies are mind-blowing from that perspective, particularly for people with lots of validators. And yeah, there's heaps of heaps of things that we're aiming to kind of like do with that, and it's very exciting to see it kind of roll out.
So there is one more EIP related to staking in Dencun, and I'm not sure if it's like needed for Rocket Pool or not, but this is about exits. So EIP-3074. Yeah, is it needed for Rocket Pool, or yeah?
So I think it's useful from like a infrastructure level, but not from a protocol level. So it's potentially interesting to have it kind of like built into our smart node stack, so that somebody could save their own exit messages, and then replay those at a point when they may have lost control of their node or something like that. So that might be one thing to bear in mind. But at a protocol level, we're not going to use that EIP, mainly because as a decentralized protocol, we would have to, well, we have no way of like holding those messages securely. So to be able to have exit messages, you need a central party essentially to aggregate those and hold them in a safe way. Otherwise, you can exit validators, and we don't really want to be in that position. And if you lose control of those exit messages, your entire protocol exits. So that's not something that we want to be doing. One EIP which is kind of on the roadmap in the future is execution layer triggered exits. They're much more interesting from our perspective, because they can kind of be gated and controlled through smart contracts to do that. So that's a little bit easier and much kind of safer from our perspective to use. So that's why we're kind of aiming to potentially use that in the future, if that gets into, is it Pectra or something like that after that.
All right, thank you. Maybe a small context about 7044. It's like about pre-signed exits, but they will be valid. Right now, before Dencun, they are valid, but on context of one hard fork, and after Dencun, they always be valid. And yeah, that is the EIP. Ahmad, do you want to continue?
Yeah. Thank you, Marek. I see Dimitri from Lido has his hand up about this. Dimitri, you want to add something?
Yeah, about 7044. So from the protocol perspective for Lido, it has some value. It is not significant. However, as you know, there's a protocol initiated withdrawals in Lido. However, for now, there's no way before 7002, there's no way to initiate it directly from a smart contracts. So there's a signaling system by simply emitting events. And on the node operator side, there's a dedicated software called Ejector that stores these pre-signed messages. It is fully on the node operator side, so it has nothing to do with the central party or anyhow connected to Lido itself, to the Lido protocol itself. However, from the operational perspective for node operators, it is now there will be no need to update these pre-signed messages. So you simply set your ejector on your infrastructure, you upload a bunch of pre-signed messages, and then you don't need to take care of updating them and so on and so forth. From the operational perspective, it will ensure that this mechanism will work smoothly. And it is important because one may argue that, okay, once the triggerable exits are in place, why you even need this thing? Because we still need this thing. Like protocols still need this thing because of the fact that triggerable exits, they cost gas, they cost fees, and they are pretty limited in the amount of exits per block. So even after triggerable exits, this infrastructure will still be used just because of the fact that it costs you nothing to publish a message on the consensus layer to exit validator, and it costs you a lot to trigger this exit from the execution layer. So from the protocol perspective, from the operational perspective of the protocol, this EIP adds some value for the Lido protocol.
All right. Thank you, Dimitri. And we have Roch who wants to ask a question. Roch?
Yeah, Darren, I wanted to ask how ready Rocket Pool is for the hard fork, and how you track if people have actually updated to the latest version.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the community are very, very proactive. So they've been kind of getting everyone to upgrade. As a decentralized protocol, we don't have control over our node operators. So it's up to them to upgrade, just like solar stakers. But our community are very, very kind of, they educate people on these things. And so no, there's definitely a lot of people upgrading. In terms of kind of analysis, again, as a decentralized protocol, we can't track whether they've upgraded from a real-time perspective. We only really know the one way we do track is through graffiti, which is obviously a very delayed kind of mechanism. So that's kind of a way that we will know. We will also know because we'll get a flood of people through our support channel that will complain that they haven't. They'll get messages saying that they haven't upgraded and they're on the wrong fork. So that is something that we will have to kind of deal with as that happens.
Right. One more question for the Rocket Pool. So like, how does 4788 affect the ODAO? Like, I know that the ultimate goal for Rocket Pool is to eliminate the need for the ODAO altogether. Does 4788 help with that?
Yes, it does. So the reason why the ODAO exists is because there is no real kind of information sharing between the beacon chain and the consensus layer and the execution layer. And so when the beacon state root is in place, there is kind of a way now to kind of have this information be transferred. It's not quite the same, but it's the way that we're approaching it is, at the moment, we have to have this trusted party because there's nothing bridging the gap. But when the beacon chain state root is in place, it means that we can turn those duties from kind of like trusted duties to trustless duties, because instead of just taking their word for it, in other words, when I say the ODAL, I mean it's a consensus-based approach. It's an honest majority. So instead of using an honest majority, we actually use kind of state proofs, and so that becomes cryptographic rather than kind of it's not even cryptoeconomic, but it's from a game perspective. So it means we can replace a lot of everything with state proofs, and then we can either use the ODAL as they are to continue that on. At the moment, we haven't really decided that yet, but particularly with some duties, I'm not sure whether all of them will go over, but there is the opportunity, and what we would like is to move all of those duties from the ODAL onto basically our node operators. Because they're trustless, they can be done by anybody, and so our node operators are perfectly kind of aligned with performing those duties. We just need to figure out what an economic model and all this sort of thing for how that would work. But that is definitely kind of a little bit into the future, but we're going to start using some of those hopefully quite soon, kind of as part of our roadmap.
Thank you, Darren. I believe Dimitri from Lido also, I wanted to ask you about the same thing. How does 4788 affect Lido? I know of Lido's plans to integrate the broader Ethereum community into running node operators and operate the Lido nodes, possibly through advanced technologies like distributed validator technology, right? How does 4788 contribute to the roadmap to reaching that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So 4788 is not I wouldn't say that it's either a game changer or something that makes things previously impossible now possible. So we always had oracles, so no problem here. However, with 4788, some of the oracle duties might be reduced directly. Some of them might be reduced indirectly. So the issue was not the issue, but the complicated part about having this beacon root on the execution layer is that theoretically you can prove any data from beacon chain on the execution layer, like literally any data. But depending on the amount of the data, depending on how far in the history this data is, depending on, yes, again, how much of a data you want to prove, there is a price for it. There is a gas price for it. So if we speak about some direct usage of this EIP without anything on top of it, so simply use it as a Merkle proof, in the Merkle proofs, then you can only prove simple things. And we even have a prototype at the moment to prove withdrawals, to prove slashings using this EIP directly. However, if we speak about the protocol level, and for example, we want to replace the whole oracle, or as Darren mentioned, the majority of the duties of the ODAO, we need something on top of it, something like, for example, ZK. And that's another thing that Lido Contributors is currently working on. So replacing the regular oracle, not as a first step, not replacing, but having them both. So the main oracle, the accounting oracle that reports TVL from the consensus layer, will report this TVL using ZK and proving that this value is indeed calculated correctly using ZK proofs. Because if we want to prove it directly, we will need to prove balances of hundreds of thousands of validators, and it is not feasible. But with ZK, it is feasible. And for the DVT, I don't think that I can imagine any direct usages at the moment. But for CSM, again, as I've mentioned, so for the permissionless protocol, for the permissionless validation, it is not only crucial to allow for the permissionless entry, it is also crucial to make as many things permissionless and trustless across the protocol, or at least across this part of the protocol as possible, so that you can not only enter permissionlessly, but you can also exit permissionlessly. And that's a crucial thing for me. That's why we will use 4788 to prove withdrawals, to release bond, and to allow node operators to exit, even if the tooling around the protocol will, for example, stop working.
Understood. Thank you so much. So we have one question from YouTube about how does the Dencun upgrade affect rewards for stakers? Does that mean less rewards because of possibly some new MEV markets? Marius, can you touch on this?
I can't. I'm not really in the MEV mind space at the moment. So if you can find someone else who can better speak on this.
Whoever wants to chime in on that could possibly go ahead. Speaking of building, Lukash?
Yeah, so I think it shouldn't have much impact on rewards, right? Because rewards on the premium fees, and even if the base fee comes down, the premium fees should stay the same, so the rewards should be more or less the same. In terms of it actually could potentially increase rewards a bit, because now more of the normal part of the block is being freed, and maybe more transactions would be included. But generally, I think it should be negligible in terms of MEV. I don't really think it would also have big repercussions. But there's, of course, there might be something I'm not seeing. Marek?
Yeah, I agree with this, that rewards shouldn't be that much affected. But I wanted to say, first of all, hello to Pari and Pavan as one person, and hello, Lion. Yeah, and talking about this, I think we have interesting question from DC Builder, and maybe Pari or Pavan or Daplion can answer this. So DC, you want to ask this on the stream?
Sure. So yeah, we were just chatting on the Zoom chat. Essentially, I was just wondering, since we were like talking about like node distributions and such, and one of the common metrics used to measure which client, like who is running what clients and at what scale, is graffitis. But the obvious problem here is that anyone can just patch whatever client code they're running and just change the string to whatever. So I was like interested in like how do we actually measure client distribution and client diversity in a way that the actual client operators are not lying or cannot lie. And there is a link sent by, let me trace it, by Ahmad from an ETH research post that allows essentially like validators to provide client information privately. And it's a project done by Nethermind Research and Nethermind Core. So I was just reading through the proposal. I guess we can maybe share that if you guys want. Yes, it seems cool.
The short answer
ahead.
is you can't. It's impossible to measure or to just reliably tell who's running what, especially because what we care about is not the act of producing a block, is the act of validating a block. So you don't leave any trace in the chain at all of what software you're running. Like the best effort that has been at doing this is what Michael from Lighthouse did way back then, which is called block print. That's a way to tell how beacon blocks are constructed. There are subtle differences in how we order attestations, and so far these differences in implementations has been big enough for an AI to tell them apart. For someone to lie, they will have to open Prism and just modify the code in a way that somehow this algorithm matches what Lighthouse is doing, which is impractical in nature. So that's why we rely on that. But the problem is that this is for block production. So if for some reason you had a setup where you are producing blocks with, I don't know, Nethermind, but you are validating with Geth, we would consider you as a Nethermind node. But what we really care about is what's the distribution of stake in terms of validation. So I think that's an impossible problem. So the next best step is rely on honesty. So things like what Nethermind are doing with this, I think it's the next best thing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Go ahead, DC.
Yeah, and another fun thing that occurred to me is like the best way is just introduce a bug and see how many nodes go down, and then you see like how much of a share were they. It's like go by each one. Okay, this many people running this many people running this.
I mean, this already happened. Like Nethermind had a bug on mainnet, and that's okay. I don't want that to happen with Geth though. So
liveness issues at that point. It's like 70% supermajority, right? In client diversity, something like that.
We don't really know.
Yeah, of course. It's probably like 90%. Everyone is just running Geth and just changing the graffiti to other clients.
Yeah, because
I think it's actually good. It's actually good that we don't know. So like everyone always wants to know like what is the client share, but I think in the end it's kind of good that we don't know. And that we cannot reliably say, okay, this validator is running this combination, because that would open us up to a bunch of new attacks where like if you figure out the validator before you is running, I don't know, Geth, and Geth has some bug that, so we have different classes of bugs, right? We have like the consensus bugs that affect all of the nodes, and then we have bugs that just does your node for a slot. And so if you figure out that the node before you is a specific type, and you find a bug that is just, okay, this node ceases operations for 30 seconds, then what you would do is just you DOS the node before you with this bug, and then you get twice the MEV. So there's actually value in not knowing that which client or which validator runs which client combination.
Right. But then it's also harder to incentivize people to like have a distribution that has no supermajority client, right? Like how do you incentivize that in protocol? It's just literally like good vibes. And
no, I mean, if Geth has a consensus bug, like the amount of economic damage that would happen is so incredibly big that I don't know, like what is there more incentive than destroying half of
losing
ETH stake?
Money, right? Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. We will never be able to do positive incentives, but we have a big stick on everyone's head already.
Incentives. Yeah, makes sense.
Right. I mean, I think the risk that is outlined and have been mentioned multiple times is what is the incentive for everyone to diversify, like Dapleon said. But the thing is, like when we're discussing reliably posting the client data somewhere, and like the honesty of the nodes talking about it, or like reporting it, sorry, then we can if we remove if we include anonymity in this operation of posting this data, then all the problems, like for example knowing what a certain node is running could introduce security problems, disappear. There is no reason for any operator to lie about what they're running. There is no incentive because it's all anonymous, and this is basically what the Nethermind research is trying to do here. So I think going back to the topics of Dencun, because I think we went ahead there far there with the conversation a little bit, which is good. That means that we have some engaging guests. I was thinking about like I heard discussions when I was in DevConnect about posting blobs together. So basically L2s, they sometimes don't post they don't want to occupy the whole blob size. So blob size is 100 something kilobyte, and maybe the the L2 wants to occupy only half of it. So they can possibly share this same blob with another L2, for example. And I heard about some concept of sharing. I think from Daplion, he was discussing this. Can you tell us, Daplion, about this concept?
Yeah, so for the last DevCon, we did a hackathon project for exactly this, blob sharing. So it's still on the works, but what the problem I think is sharing blobs in a way that you can have like trustless payment and all the goodies that you want in a way that it's cheap. It's pretty hard because you rely on some on-chain actions that will raise the cost. So at the end, you as a rollup has the option of you either wait to full the blob and you pay zero overhead, or you use some external service to do the sharing and then you have some overhead. So it will be, what's the premium or the incentive for a rollup to post more frequently, or to just like not wait to fill the blob, if that's not possible, in exchange for that premium. Or it depends on what security guarantees you want to get out of it. Like if you just ask someone on an off-chain system, hey, post the data for me, and they do it, and then you pay them, and you're happy with this setup, then sure, that can be done. But maybe rollups, they want better guarantees, or they don't want to front liquidity to pay for these costs. So I think it's an open problem. There was another team on the same hackathon that did the same thing, but with Suave from Flashbots. So in that case, you could guarantee atomicity of the payment in exchange for publishing inside of a block that ends up on mainnet. But yeah, Suave is not here yet, and it's not clear that it will work. But yeah, it's a interesting concept. I think someone will crack it, or what's realistically going to happen is all these super chain things that are happening now. Like we have OP-Stack, we have Polygon with their CDK, and Arbitrum with their own version of this. Each one of these type of chains will be optimized with the same stack, and they will have some aggregation layer that will bundle data and execution to make both things cheaper. And I think there it makes a lot of sense.
Right. Thank you, Daplayan. I think I want to ask also Ben from Coinbase about if they're planning to post blobs post blobs together with Optimism.
Sorry, you can't really speak to that and what Base is thinking. First off, like I'm not part of the Base team. I'm on Cloud. I just I love Base, and I speak with them all the time, and I try to educate some things to them about what's going on in the ecosystem. In terms of their plans with something like sharing blobs and whatnot, I cannot speak to that. Sorry.
Right. Thank you. No problem. So I want to welcome our new guests that joined us recently. Putas. Hello. How are you? Putos.
Hello.
How's it going? And we have Barnabas. So, of course, Putos from the Prism team and Barnabas from Ethereum Foundation quality assurance and testing team. Thank you for joining us. Putos, how is Prism preparations for the fork?
Well, we're sure glad that Goerli triggered a crazy edge case that could have happened in mainnet, and this highlights the problem of client diversity. We triggered the bug in Goerli that having more than 30% of the network participation makes the network impossible to finalize. We are typically calling on Geth having over 66% of the network participation as a big danger that would just trigger slashing if if we fail to, I mean, if we trigger such a bug, we will have to slash either all get validators or go into a fork or have the community participating on this. But as far as I know, I wasn't aware of this, but this happens on the consensus layer with only 33% of the participation. Currently on Goerli, the Prism validators are deadlocked. If there is a new justification, the validators would be unlocked. They are proposing blocks fine, but they cannot attest. Any attestation by a Prism validator today in Goerli would slash them. So, and this kind of bugs happened with only 33% of the participation, not more. So I'm very glad that this was triggered on Goerli and we could fix it quickly.
Right. I mean, we have Barry and Barnabas here to tell us about the premature death of Goerli. What's going on?
Well, we have seen major validators and node operators shut down their nodes ahead of schedule, basically, which led to unfinality, and unfinality led to some larger issues in different clients where if you have a non-finality period for an extended period of time, then some clients will have difficulty keeping up to the head of the chain.
So what happens is so first off, like Barnabas said, there was a lot of people who just shut off their validators ahead of time. Unfortunately, it would have been nice if they had at least submitted the exits and waited for the exits to process before they turned off their validators. That would have been a graceful shutdown. But that's not what we had. We had kind of a destructive shutdown. And the issue is the longer you have a non-finalized network, the network tends to fork a lot more. And you need to keep a lot more information in memory, do a lot more processing, etc. And that starts to hit bottlenecks on machines. And you end up with the situation where more people turn off their machines then because, hey, it's not working anyway. It was a deprecated network. So why are we just throwing more resources at this problem? Let's just shut it down. And that's exactly where we are right now. So our focus right now is not really on saving Goerli. I don't think there's anything really left to do to save it. Inactivity leak will do its part, hopefully, and we eventually might see it restored. But I think it takes a very long time for that to really happen, even at the scale. So our focus right now is to try and help projects that are reliant on Goerli to migrate off of it as soon as possible. So if you are a project that's currently highly dependent on Goerli, please reach out. We'll help you in any way we can to move to either Holsky in case you're testing large validator setups, Sepolia in case you're a DApp. And if you're a solo validator, we can highly recommend Ephemery, where the network resets every 2 weeks or so, and you can just test out your deposit and forget about it later, and you won't be affecting the network health.
Great. Thank you so much, Parry. So I want to also start to discuss the other EIPs that are included in Dencun. Like, for example, transient storage, opcodes, self-destruct only in the same transaction. We have a lot of core divs around in the call, Marius, Marek, Lukasz. So Marius, what effects do introduction, for example, of transient storage opcodes have on users of the network and memory copy as well?
You always ask me the difficult questions. I don't know anything about what happens on chain. I only know the effects that it has on testing and how hard it makes everything, because we have a new way of copying memory. We have a new kind of storage segment. So I cannot really talk about the stuff that actually that this really unlocks. It kind of you could do the same thing with other opcodes, in my opinion, but it's way more expensive. Maybe Łukasz can talk more on the app level side.
So
right.
I don't really know the app level side, because I'm not the app level developer, but I talked with few, and what I remember from the talks with them is that the transit storage opcode allows to basically decrease gas cost of some kinds of transaction that really can rely on this mechanism, right? I'm not entirely sure what it's actually about. But the self-destruct is easy, right? That's easy. We want to go to Verkle trees, and we probably will get there in 2 hard forks. That's the current plan. To have next hard fork without Verkle trees, and the one after that with Verkle trees. But we are already heavily working on Verkle trees, and I think all the client teams, EL client teams. So self-destruct is really needed for that. Because Verkle trees and self-destruct are not really liking each other at all. So yeah, that's the plan to get to the to get to the Verkle trees.
Can you elaborate why they don't work?
To be honest, I not entirely sure right now how to explain it.
It's a bit hard to explain. I agree, but
yeah.
I can try if you.
Okay, you can try
Please
explaining
go
it
ahead.
better.
So basically, whenever we execute a block, right, we have the old state, then we have the transactions, and then we create a new state. And the difference between those states, it's kind of bounded, right? We have the gas limit, and the gas limit tells you this is the maximum amount of changes that you can make between 2 blocks. And now, like, all of the operations kind of have a reasonable cost, roughly. Some of them are more expensive, some of them are less expensive, but they all bound the changes that can happen between 2 blocks, except for the self-destruct. So what the self-destruct does, it clears a contract from the state. That means all the nodes have to delete this contract, the contract code, and the storage. And the storage can be quite large. So we have contracts that are almost 500 megabytes in size. So if you would imagine someone calling self-destruct on one of these contracts, then suddenly the difference between one block and the next block is not like 20 or 100 kilobytes, or I think it can be up to like 3 megabytes or something. That's the difference between 2 blocks. But now the difference is like 500 megabytes. And the problem is within Verkle, or within the stateless world, you always send the differences between the 2 blocks to all of the nodes in the stateless network. And so that would mean if something like a big contract, I think USDC, USDT, those are like the really big contracts where you have a lot of balances, a lot of storage slots set. If one of those self-destructs, you would need to send roughly like 500 megabytes of data over the stateless network. And you have to send it within 12 seconds, because then that is when the next block happens. So you would have to send 500 megabytes in 12 seconds over the whole network. And everyone still has to verify everything and verify the proofs. And so this is like, it's a non-starter. So we can only move to a stateless world when we have the self-destruct.
Right. Thank you, Marius. Very good explanation. I see Anders' hand up. Anders?
I wanted to add to what Lucas was saying about the transient storage. So specific use cases would be for like a re-entry lock. So because transient storage exists at the transaction level, you can approve an ERC20 transaction and also actually do the transaction in the same. So it will help gas cost a lot.
Right. I think the same thing is with memory copy, right? mcopy, the new opcode. It also it reduces the gas cost of copying a part of memory inside the AVM. And I think with new compilers and new smart contracts being deployed that utilize these opcodes, you will see a little bit less gas used for certain transactions. Lukasz, you have your hand up?
Yes, so I want to add a bit, one more detail to what Marius said about the Verkle trees. So in the Verkle trees, we store all the contract under some contract state root, let's say contract root. So it would be easy to just transmit that this contract was deleted in the witness for the block. But with Verkle, one contract storage can be distributed between multiple nodes in the tree, so we cannot do that in the Verkle tree. So yeah, so that's why it makes it more complicated. So it enables us small witnesses, but it this allows us to do this big state changes in one block.
Right.
By the way,
yeah.
we have we actually have code within Geth that just ignores these big deletions. So because these like deleting 500 megabytes from disk is already like a kind of a lot within 12 seconds, we actually ignore everything that is, I think, over a couple megabytes. So if something like this would happen right now, we would just mark the account as deleted, but not actually delete the stuff from disk, because of it would create so much I/O overhead.
But will it be pruned later?
Yes, it will be pruned at some point, but that is like a background process, so it's
perfect. Great, thank you. There are also other EIPs in Dencun that are related to the beacon chain. 3 of them to be specific. If we remove 4844 and 4788, there is the 7044 that we already discussed kind of, but it's good to touch on this again. 7045 and 7514. And I want to start with the chum limit change. Like, why did the core developers opt into setting a maximum chum limit to the beacon chain? I think Putas can.
Oh no, definitely that one is for that line.
And Potus.
Oh, Putos. Okay, sorry. I keep butchering your name. Yeah, but I'm not sure that line is with us. So okay, so till that line comes back, we can talk about.
I can tell you a little bit about that one. So
sure.
So there's an issue with validating a block in which the biggest chunk of our state, of the beacon state has nothing to do with the execution state. It's much smaller, and we can actually just broadcast it. We can share it quickly. You can start a beacon node from scratch in less than 2 minutes currently. You can download the full beacon state quickly. However, the largest chunk of it is the validator set. Is an array with every single validator, the ones that are already exited, the ones that are already withdrawn. Those are frozen. Nothing's going to change with those, but we need to keep them around. And you need to rehash this full list on every single slot, essentially. Right. So you keep it in a cache, you only hash the corresponding leaves, and everyone is optimized to do this as much as possible. But still, we have this large list that every day grows and only grows, and if it's not bounded, how it's going to grow, and this affects block processing. This is particularly hurtful at epoch processing. Whenever you change your epoch from one epoch to the next one, you typically do need to hash this entire list again. So in order to, this is just a stopgap to try to prevent the growth of this validator set, that we bounded the churn limit in such a way that it gives us slightly more time until we reach a critical time to come up with other solutions that are more would be more impactful. Some of them are increasing the max effective balance. Another one would be just using some mechanisms so that you can consolidate different validators into a single key. Other ones would be, well, reusing the indices so that those pieces of the validator set where a validator has already withdrawn and is no longer in use can be reused by a new validator. And all of these set of changes are expected to happen in the following forks. Right.
Okay. Cool. So basically, this was added so a lot of additions or removals of validators could not result in a rapid change in state. Is that what you're trying to say? To simplify it, right? I'm trying to simplify it for the normal user.
This is correct.
Right. Thank you. And I think we have someone from the Nimbus team. Wait, who from the Nimbus team joined us? I think Kaushal. Kaushal, you're here? Trying to look for Kaushal.
I think they're together with Pari and Pavan in the same square there. Do you hear us, guys?
Oh.
Oh, maybe they stepped away for the moment.
Right. That's fine. So discussing the other EIPs that Beacon Chain has in this upgrade. So there are the 7044, which is perpetually valid signed voluntary exit, and 7045, increased speed of block confirmation. And I think we already touched on the voluntary exit, but like, how does having the voluntary exit being the signed voluntary exit being valid for a longer time be helpful, and why was it not the case from the beginning? Does anyone wants to describe? I think Daplion is back. We were discussing chum limit, Daplion. You missed it.
Yeah, I don't want to go too much into details, but Ansgar and Kaspar has published very good research about what would be a sustainable endgame for distribution of ETH stake and what are the risks of going all in and having 90%, 80% of ETH stake. So one of the motivations for 7514 was the realization that that scenario was possible and that we are not ready for it. So we needed the guarantee that that scenario was impossible to happen, at least in 2 to 3 years. So we have time to figure out and decide to do something or not. And I think now it's getting clear that we should do something, or it will be quite irresponsible otherwise. So I definitely recommend everyone to check this research from Kaspar and Ansgar about it. I'll drop the links on the chat.
Sure. Thank you. So yeah, going back to the signed voluntary exit validity. Why was it that the case that these signed voluntary exit are only valid for a short period of time, and then once a fork happens or something like that, they become invalid and you have to generate them again? Possibly Daplion can also answer this. 2 forks, right? 2 forks.
Yeah, so I think the original motivation was in the case of a contentious long fork, so an Ethereum Classic style fork, it will be possible that if you want to keep the same key active on both chains, which would be very complicated, but let's roll with that, you could reuse one exit that you do in one chain on the other one. So if you don't make it valid, then within some period of time, you can exit safely from one chain without affecting the other. So it's kind of a weak argument because it's very unlikely that this will be useful in practice. And I think at the time we did not consider the UX considerations of having to do these ongoing signatures if you want to have the certainty that some party would be able to exit another party forever. So it's not a big deal because both cases are kind of covered, but it's such a tiny change that it makes sense to just roll it in.
Right. Thank you, Dapline. And we have also Kugan from ZK-Sync who joined us, and Igor. Hi, Kugan and Igor. Hello.
Hi. How's everybody doing? Where are the blobs? Where are the blobs at? Do we have a blob watch? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, please.
Do we have a blob watch in terms of when the actual activation happens? Will we see blobs going across the screen?
Yeah. So once the fork, the cooldown, the fork activates, we will be probably looking at blobs live coming
What
in
are
on Ethereum.
that's the countdown. Which blob scanner are people looking at? I've seen blob scan, but just not to derail everything, but what are people okay, here's the countdown.
Right. So actually, since we are here, maybe I can say that we are only an hour and 8 minutes away from the Dencun upgrade. Just a reminder. We will be switching to watching the chain and what happens on it once the upgrade hits. So one last EIP that hasn't been discussed is increased space of block confirmation. This is EIP-3045. On the
one second, maybe before we go to the EIP, did we have a few raised hands, and I think yeah, were we did we have any more questions to Kugan?
Yeah, I just want to add, we are talking about the countdown and if we will see blobs. One important and very interesting fact is that when the fork happens, the blob gas would be one way. So for some hours, you will be able to post whatever you want in Ethereum practically for free. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity because then the gas would go up. So yeah.
So yeah, can you actually explain the logistics of that? Because I know they're targeting 3 blobs for the activation. Will it start with 3? Like how I wrote a little thread about the cold start problem, which I think is the sort of the what a lot of people are going to be curious to watch and see how this plays out, because it's a fee market that hasn't existed before, and but it's also subject to the 1559 mechanisms, which are so anyways, it's supposed to be sort of interesting to see logistically, like what does it actually look like when it activates? Is it just miners will start looking at that there's this at the sort of the pool to start adding stuff into blobs, or what does it actually look like?
I mean, we cannot predict the future, but we expect definitely for people to take advantage of the low gas. Like if let's roll with the example that fees are really low forever, then rollups have an incentive to just keep publishing as much data as possible. Because I don't know, I think like 90 to 95% of the fees is data one data postings. So if blobs are free, then fees on L2 are incredibly cheap. So that's gonna drive demand.
But the 1559 is it's not sort of market conditions, right? They have a target audience, they have a target data amount that they want, and so they'll raise prices of that data accordingly. So it'll start at 1, but then it will fluctuate.
So it's an exponential function based on how much cumulative excess gas has been added to the chain above the target. So if on the first block we have 6 blocks, then we have 3 extra. Then on the next block we have another 3, then we have 6 and 9 and 12 and so on. And with this excess blob gas, which is committed on the block, you compute an exponential formula and you derive the actual fee. So the more that we go around this target, the fees will raise exponentially until we get to some point where demand will level up to 3. And if we dip below 3, the excess gas will start to decrease, and then the fees will decrease with itself. So,
and it's block to block, is that right? Rather than, like Bitcoin, the proof of work accelerates over a certain window. But
yeah, it's block to block.
Cool. I see. Putas?
Oh no, I just want to comment on 7045 that
oh dear.
Not about this one.
Yeah. So yeah, we were discussing about before this, we were talking about increased speeds of block confirmation. Can you tell us more about the EIP and?
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask instead. So where are you getting this comment? The EIP is about something different. It's about increasing the time that you can include an attestation. So perhaps we're talking about different things, or perhaps you're talking about the safe head mechanism.
No, it's the same one. I just missed the title somehow.
Oh, I see. So
EIP-3045, I guess.
Yes,
right?
increase max attestation
increase max attestation inclusion slot. Yeah. So this is just purely a theoretical and technical change. What happened is that before the merge, there were some security concerns regarding very long forks that could be caused by a single validator. These were kept in a separate repo, hidden from the community for a while. Every client implemented this and released these changes. This was considered a merge blocker. Everyone released this. And after the merge, several months before the merge, the actual spec changes were made public. Now, there's one piece of this attack that has not been completely taken care of. This is an attack where a heavily state validator could withhold. This is a technical attack, but the point was that there could be a situation where someone is withholding blocks, releases a chain, an alternative chain, and then the honest chain does not have block space to include the attestations that were included in the attacker's chain. So this is just purely a theoretical situation that this EIP fixes. And it allows, this EIP is a requirement. Once you have a theoretical proof of the correctness and the formal properties of fork choice on the beacon chain, you could now implement faster confirmation of blocks that are based on these formal properties of fork choice. So there are some new works that are going to come in the coming months that are aiming to confirm a block in the happy case in, say, 24 seconds instead of essentially 2 epochs as now.
Right. Marek?
Yeah, I have one more question to Potus, because there is one more change in Dencun that I'm not sure how many people are aware of, because it is not EIP, but it is important. So I'm talking about engine API change with should override builder. And yeah, Potus, I think you.
Oh, that's a great flag, and I was hoping that everyone would have it by now implemented. Clients already implement this. As far as I am aware, Lodestar would not take a block. So let me describe first the change. The change is a very simple thing. It's a Boolean. When a beacon node is about to propose a block, the beacon node requests one block from its execution layer and presumably another block from the builder, from a relay, and then it compares those two blocks. And it makes some comparison. These clients are free to do whatever comparisons they want. Typically, beacon nodes will have a flag that would say, if the builder's block is not paying me more than my execution client, then choose the execution client block. if the builder's block is not paying me this minimum amount of money, then just use the local execution block. And we want as many validators as possible to use the local execution block because locally built blocks are less censor prone. They're not censoring blocks. Okay, so this flag, what this flag is doing is giving the EL some choice in making this decision. Currently, the beacon node makes this decision purely on financial motivations. Like if the builder's block is paying more, if the builder's block is paying a minimum. And what this flag is allowing is the EL to say, by whatever heuristics they want, to say, hey, there are some censoring transactions. There are some censored transactions in the mempool. I have seen them long enough, or I have seen them forked enough, or I have seen them for whatever reasons the EL wants, and it signals the beacon node, please choose my block, do not choose the builders, because there's censorship going on. As far as I'm aware, only Lodestar currently implements this on the CL side. Prism can do it in less than a day, but the problem is that the ELs are not implementing any actual heuristic today.
Yeah, we need to seriously talk with EL teams about it when they implement it. Okay, John Diener, you wanted to say something about Lodestar implementation here?
Yep, so we do implement it, and we will reject builder block if EL indicates that that the CL should override the builder block if it senses that there is some censorship going on. But as Proto said, that we don't really have this flag implemented, and I think it would be very important if we can get this flag out there. And Proto has already shared some heuristics that are very viable and that we can quickly implement and check whether censorship is happening in the network. And I think if we do that, then the censorship will be greatly dealt at, even at off protocol level, and with ILs on the horizon, or our focus towards that, I think we will definitely solidify Ethereum's position on censorship, that we want to be a chain in which basically people are free to transact and nobody can censor them.
All right, Barnabas said that it feels like ACDC, so we can ask Barnabas how we are ready in terms of testing for 844.
If I would just continue on how testing is going for 844, then I guess it would be just the continuation of ACDC call. But yeah, we should be all set for Dencun. We have all of our dashboards ready, and should be able to monitor the upcoming fork.
Can you tell us a bit about how you're monitoring?
Yeah, sure. So we have a dashboard that I could actually maybe share my screen. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to.
You should be allowed to give it a go. How do you?
Yeah, it should be.
I will have to restart Zoom. Give me 1 second.
Oh, okay. I could put the music back on, but I think we can probably.
So about monitoring, I think there is fork monitor. So we will see if there's any forks between the client. We have if stats. Not sure if DevOps team. Actually, not sure if Barry is there. I'm not sure if we have if stats for this.
We have. I think Putos has his hand up.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, did I? Oh, it's probably just to quickly mention on this last flag. So people are encouraged. There are other solutions to censorship resistant. People are discussing about inclusion lists, and for the EL, to decide which transactions are actually being censored to be included in the inclusion list, they are going to have to implement exactly the same sort of heuristics as for this flag. So this flag that is currently now implemented, I mean, it's there already in clients. They just need to implement the heuristics. Those heuristics, those code paths are going to have to be implemented anyways for inclusion lists. So it's a good time to start implementing those heuristics, and just instead of like saying, well, put these transactions in an inclusion list, just say, put this Boolean to be true. There is censorship. But exactly the same code path is something that people can and have to start working today.
I think Marius, you wrote a blog post about the inclusion list. I think you propose different approach a bit.
Yes. I proposed a very kind of there are, in my opinion, there are two ways of doing inclusion lists. Do like nice, please, can you please build a block with these transactions? Or there's the stick with like, you have to build a block with these transactions, or you don't build a block at all. And I kind of prefer the former, but it seems like everyone else is preferring the latter. And so I have an implementation for the former, and I've been working on an implementation for the latter as well. So yeah, I don't want to like let my biases stop inclusion lists from going live. So I just decided to basically implement and work on both approaches, so that we can in the end just make an informed decision about the different ideas, and see which one everyone likes best.
How is your solution working in details? How
so basically, it's not really my solution. It is just it's just the first thing that kind of comes to mind, and everyone else has kind of moved on from this. And so to be quite frank, the way I see it is like, there's this very simple solution that can be created without a hard fork. And then there are some problems with it. And then people came and like discussed these problems and created like more elaborate solutions that have different problems. And then they created another solution to fix the problem. And then like it kind of grows from there. And the current spec is very big compared to like the initial idea of it. And so the initial idea is basically you as a validator, you say, okay, I'm going to track these accounts that I want to have included, the transactions included. And so whenever you are proposing a block, you would create a list of the transactions that you would want in this block, and you send it to the MEV builders, and they can then either decide that they are going to produce a block with it, or they are not going to produce a block with it. And it's up to them. So for example, if they are forbidden by the government or by whomever to include certain transactions, they have the choice to not bid on this block. And in the end, you will get the block, like someone will probably bid on it, and you will get the block that that you kind of wanted. And this is just a change within the consensus layer and the MEV pipeline, and it's like it's not under consensus. It's just like an optional opt-in thing. But the problem with this, it's optional, and people can just decide not to do it. So we kind of still rely on the goodwill of people to to like forgo MEV rewards in order to be more censorship resistant. The other approach is kind of you're forcing the next block producer to include your blocks, your transactions, and either they are included or they will lose their block proposal. And so it's kind of Germany, we have this saying of the sugar bread and the stick. Like one is like the nice benefit, and the other one is like we hit you over the head with the stick. Yeah, so I think those are kind of the two approaches of inclusion lists. But as I said, I'm also working on the second one and have a prototype for it.
So in theory, we could implement both solutions, and your solution doesn't require hard fork, so we could we will know before hard fork how it works in practice, and yeah, then
yes, we could do that, but it does require some changes to the MEV pipeline. But yeah.
I see that Barnabas is there. Barnabas, how are you working after restart? All good?
Yeah, it should be working now. Let me just share my screen.
Perfect.
Not sure if you can see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so basically we have a dashboard here for all the blobs that have appeared on the Holoski chain. Showing this kind of dashboard for mainnet doesn't make much sense yet because we have no blob production, but this will be an interesting dashboard to keep an eye on after the fork. We have another dashboard that is monitoring all of our mainnet nodes, and we can monitor the memory utilization and CPU usage throughout the fork and see if all the different client combinations are keeping up to the head of the chain. And we have another overview side for the blobs and one more update tracker, which basically shows the fork schedule. It counts down the number of seconds till the fork, and it will show justified and finalized once the fork has become finalized.
Do you have metrics for the bandwidths used by blobs?
Yep. Just for the blobs, like a separate bandwidth. There's a blob sidecar propagation in terms of how long does it take for each blob to reach to another different node. But I don't think we have a different metrics just for how much extra data we use for the blobs.
Are you running all client pairs or most of them?
We're running most of them. I don't think we have all the pairs for mainnet, but we have a good mix.
Do you have fork monitor as well in your infrastructure?
Looks like one of our nodes is down.
Yeah, so this is important page. We can assume that fork went well when we see all the clients right now, so everything is on the same block, and yeah, it will be very important metric. And yeah, Barnabas, do you want to show something more, or we can?
No, that's it.
Okay.
And I will actually have to go to another live stream. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. There is question from Potus on the chat. Potus, do you want to ask here?
Oh, it's just what is written there. Whether or not there's a way if I have a way of knowing from my mempool if I have blob transactions in the mempool, if what the tips for those transactions is, and if I can monitor blob transactions locally.
So for Geth, you can. We have implemented a bunch of different metrics for it. It will show you how, like you would need a Grafana dashboard to read out those.
Oh, I mostly mean an RPC in an RPC way, right? So I want to post a transaction and I want to know what the current fee is, so that I can post a transaction with the right fee and not a blind one.
No, well, we kind of have this. You have the fill transaction RPC. That one should work. But like for the normal transaction pool, we have txpool.locals or txpool.inspect or content. But because the blob pool is so large, at least we in Geth decided not to export the metrics. But I don't know about Nethermind.
Yeah, so to reply to Alexei, the blob-based fee is just useless for blobs if the builders are not including them for a big tip. The tip is what matters here.
Right. Thank you. I wanted to ask Christoph from our smart contract security research team about the implications of the transient storage opcode, because like introducing this new opcode could it has implications on the EVM and smart contracts. Is there any risk in utilizing this opcode? How does interaction between context switching between multiple smart contracts utilizing transient storage in this case? Please tell us.
Okay, so transient storage is, as we know, is like storage, but it's cleared at the end of a transaction, right? So it allows for new patterns when you build your smart contracts, which actually, I mean, maybe not new patterns, but the cheaper ones. Let's say when you want to use a reentrancy lock, right? You can do it much more cheaply. So because it's like new place to store your data, we can actually only predict what can go wrong, right? And what can go wrong is actually developers kind of misuse it, and from this there are some potential security concerns. So so one thing that may happen is that there is this protection from reentrancy when you call transfer, right? When you transfer if, you can call transfer, and that's one of the not actually recommended one, but that's one of the protections from reentrancy. So when you send Ether to someone, this other contract should not be able to re-enter and do some writes to the storage. But when a transient storage is applied, then such thing as protection with transfer does not apply, because write to transient storage is much more cheaper than to the storage, right? So then when how transfer works is that it only allows to spend 2,300 gas, and then these assumptions may be broke, right? So that's one thing. Like, you should not use transfer, no, and basically you should apply other re-entrancy mitigations anyways, right? But the other interesting things may be the patterns that will be used. For example, you have there is, let's say, this broken composability with the current design of this transient storage. So how it used to be is like when you do some calls before this EIP, right? Each call separately is independent from each other. So what I mean is, if you do two calls in two different transactions, it's always the same as doing those two calls in the one transaction, right? But now it may not actually be the case. And if we think of some simple example, it's like let's say we have a counter, just a contract that adds one, right? So if we call this contract twice, but in separate transactions, the end of the second transaction would have counter as one, because in the first one we would have one, then we clear storage, and then we have one again. But then if we batch those two calls in one transaction, we have at the end of the transaction we have a two, right? So that's like example of this problem which didn't exist before. It's like batching transaction actually may result in different output than having this in separate transactions.
Right. So is the context? Sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to ask. So what you're saying is the context for transient storage the same for multiple for the whole transaction, or is it a contract per contract kind of context where if you store something in a specific contract using transient storage and you call another contract, it will not be able to access or write over what you wrote in the first one?
Well, so let's say it's a context of a transaction. So it works like a storage, right? So you may write to the storage, and then other contracts may read it. But at the end of each transaction, this transient storage is just cleared. So so that's really cool, because it allows you to, let's say, communicate between those execution frames, right? But the problem is, I mean, maybe with some assumptions when you develop, you have to understand this in a different way. The other interesting example that may arise from this transient storage is that there may be some, let's say, data leakage. What can be understood by this is that let's say you can use transient storage to approve and swap, right? That's like a really common pattern. You just have to approve some contract and just swap, so it can take your tokens and do something with it. So this is now not ideal, because you have to do with approval, you have to do write to the storage, which is expensive. But now you can do this write to the transient storage, which is cheap, and then you can do a swap. But what can be tempting is just an example, right? But what can be tempting to the developers to save even more gas is that, say, okay, I approve a contract, do swap, and then I won't clear this approval because it will be cleared at the end of a transaction, right? But this assumption may be wrong, and then this approval that is left may be somehow reused, right? Let's say in some other call with the same transaction. The same possible problem may arise if you would like to use let's say mapping, right? But in this transient storage, and then you would write to the mapping, and you would not bother clearing it because at the end of a transaction it will be cleared anyways. But then again, between your call that you use, function call, and the end of a transaction, maybe other calls, and this data that is still there, this, let's say, leaked data may result in unexpected behaviors. So that's some things to keep in mind when you develop with this new place, right? To store your data.
Right. Thank you so much, Christoph, for the insight. Good morning, Mike. Sorry for waking you up this early. We're so happy to have you.
Yeah, no, thanks for hosting. This is exciting.
I mean, I know it's like 7 a.m. for you this morning, but we wanted to have you specifically to touch on the Ethereum roadmap and where we are on this on the grand scheme of things, right? Like we know that the 4844 and implementation of danksharding, proto-danksharding is a step forward, but it's not the end goal. And all the other EIPs, for example, like the self-destruct only in same transaction is a step towards Verkle trees, etc. We want to touch on what's coming for Ethereum in the coming years. So tell us.
Yeah, obviously a lot to be done still. I like to think of I still think Vitalik's roadmap image is just like such a nice way of framing the future stuff that we're working on. So I guess in terms of the merge, actually, can we pull it up? That'd be cool to like kind of just have it up and
you can share your screen. Feel free to do so.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, cool. Can you see this?
Yep.
Cool. Just making sure my stuff's set. Okay. Yeah, so just kind of going down the list. I still think the merge, there's a few really important things that need to be done in order to finish off the proof of stake the proof of stake mechanism. And kind of the end all be all goal here is the single slot finality thing, right? So there's this concept of epochs now, and right now there's kind of block confirmation rules have sort of two stages before they're finalized, right? So once the block is produced, it actually doesn't have the same economic guarantees that it'll have at the point when it gets finalized. So when the block is produced, some attestations are cast by different validators who see that block as the head of the chain, but not until the block has been justified and finalized does it have the full like economic security of the entire Ethereum validator set behind it, right? And finality is just this this kind of shorthand term we use to say that the block will remain on the canonical chain unless more than 1/3 of the stake is slashable, meaning they voted that block out and replaced it with a different one. So yeah, right now the way kind of a lot of the problems that we face are due to the fact that blocks that are produced don't have that strong of settlement assurances, don't have that strong of economic security, and can be reorged potentially in the time between when they're produced and when they get finalized. So single slot finality is just taking that whole process and compressing it down into one slot, which is the ultimate goal.
But what prevents core devs from, for example, saying, okay, instead of finalizing after 2 epochs, let's finalize after 1 epoch? What prevents them from doing that?
Right. So the biggest thing is the number of validators. So if we go to validatorq.com, we can see that the number of active validators is, oh my gosh, we're so close. Yeah, 980,000. Right. So we're right about at 1 million. And yeah, basically the issue here is that in order for this finality, in order to have this this heuristic for economic security given to a block, you need all of the attestations for all of those active validators to be aggregated and verified, to ensure that they actually voted for that block. And doing so in such a short time frame of a single slot is very difficult, which is why it was split over kind of this entire epoch, which is 32 slots. So kind of dividing that work and parallelizing it over that, or not really parallelizing it, but just doing it over those 32 slots is a lot more feasible. So yeah, one of the kind of circling back to the roadmap, it's actually on the Scourge, but I always thought it should be on the merge, which is this raise the max effective balance. This is EIP-3074 So this doesn't get us, this helps because it allows validators to have larger balances than just the 32 ETH. So right now, Coinbase, I see Ben is on here. Hey, Ben.
Hello, sir. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah. Coinbase is the example I always use because they're a single entity that runs a huge amount of the stake. And as a result, they also run a huge number of the validators. So allowing them to have a single validator with more stake than 32 ETH could allow them to consolidate their kind of, I think they have let's see, we're at $1 million. They're probably at around 200,000 validators. They could consolidate that down to maybe 2,000 or something similar, or even 200. So reducing the number of validators is a huge step towards getting single slot finality. Everything else, the actual algorithm has fully been kind of specced out. It's just that we have too many validators to do it today, basically.
Right. So max EB, our max effective balance, is a step forward towards this.
Yep. There's also this other idea of total stake capping. So that's another box in the Scourge. Again, I think most of the staking economics stuff should actually go in the merge, because it's all about the end game proof of stake. And this kind of circles back to the same idea in that we can see here, which is that it's slightly different than the total number of validators, but we're actually curious about the total supply of Ethereum that's staked, or total supply of Ether that's staked. So right now we have 31 million. The total supply of Ether is like 120 million. So that maps to like 26% of the total supply staked. As a result of this, you could imagine a different world where instead of reducing the number of validators by consolidating, we actually reduce the number of validators by taking the amount of supply and reducing the amount that's staked. The original Beacon Chain spec, I was actually talking to Danny about this a few days ago. The original Beacon Chain spec was written to target between 10 and 30% of the total supply staked. The kind of thing we're looking at in terms of what controls that and what the consensus mechanism is that tries to target that is what's called the issuance curve. So the issuance curve is this number that basically says, here's how profitable it is to be a validator. Currently, it scales as 1 over square root of x, which goes down relative. I wonder if I can find a plot of it quickly. There's this recent ETH research post by Casper and Ansgar about this. Issuance. Okay, this is like a live demo where I'm trying to find. Oh, that's. Okay, never mind. That's not it. That's the one from Anders. Okay, yeah, here we go. Endgame staking economics. We found it. It worked. Right. So this is the yield today, and it's this 1 over square root of x curve, which means it goes down exponentially quickly, but the power of the exponent is -1/2. So right. Basically the idea here is that as more Ether is staked, the incentive for each new validator is still positive, but it's decreasing. But the problem with this function, it is monotone decreasing, but it's always positive, right? So even as you get to the far ends of Ether staked, like 100 million, 110 million, 120 million, there's still positive, like ETH denominated real yield from staking in the consensus layer. Right. So yeah, another way to kind of cap the amount of validators would be to cap the total amount of stake. And there's a few different proposals floating around for this. Obviously, there's kind of 2 or 3 confounding things here. One is that the consensus issuance isn't the only reward that a validator gets, right? A validator also gets reward from the execution layer. That's denoted here from this MEV yield. Also restaking and I guess general like centralization pressures. All right, let's just talk about restaking. So restaking is a way you can earn additional yield on your staked ETH. So you could imagine restaking being like another arrow on top of this, and then another dotted curve up here. So basically, all of these things are kind of outside of the view of the consensus layer, because it's all in the execution layer. It's at the application layer, maybe. So changing the economics of the consensus layer kind of has all these downstream effects. Also, it's kind of one of these things it's very easy to change, but it's very difficult. Kind of memetically and politically. There's actually quite a historical context for changing the issuance curve in the proof of work days. Almost all the old hard forks went from, I think the original one was like 100 Ether per block to 50 to 25, kind of this halvening that was proposed through social consensus, similar to Bitcoin, except Bitcoin's is kind of programmatically built in. But once we hit proof of stake, once we hit the merge, we haven't changed the issuance at all. So changing it now is kind of one of those things where it takes a lot to get everyone behind it, and it's one of those things that you can only change a few times, maybe. So that's another potential way. Kind of, it was a long rambling rant to get to the point that another way of minimizing the number of validators to get towards single slot finality would be to cap the total amount of stake.
I mean,
and that's another thing we're exploring. Yeah.
I mean, like, but the consequences of changing probably this specific curve are like more bigger than just capping the amount of stake, right? Like, if we change this curve without properly studying the effect of this change, it could lead to more centralization of the network and reducing the amount of home or solo stakers that are part of the network. That's why the devs don't just like flip the switch and change the issuing curve for Ethereum. Yeah, we can't just do that. Yeah, please go on.
Yeah, cool. I think that kind of covers the main points of the merge and the staking economics track. There's other important things here, like improving node operator usability, just making it super easy. Also, this kind of this is kind of like in the end game, but ideally, I think Vitalik had a poll, it was either on Farcast or Twitter, where he was asking kind of what's the main bottleneck for people joining the network. This is kind of the flip side of the coin. It's like we want to make sure that staking remains decentralized. But the main limiting factor, I think, is generally the 32 ETH. There's just like a really high capital requirement to have that much ETH to run a validator. So in the future, this improved node operator usability extends beyond just like making the software easier to run. It probably also extends to like making it cheaper to be a validator. And there's lots of proposals. There's this rainbow staking, which Barnaby published a few months ago, which talks about potentially like two different tiers of stakers. Like there's kind of these delegator tiers, there's the node operator tiers, and then there's kind of the solo staking tier, and then the solo delegating tier. But yeah, I'll leave that for maybe future reading. And then explore solutions to liquid staking. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna ask. I'm also seeing some parts about the MIF track about inclusion lists and EPBS, and I think there is discussions among core devs these days about inclusion of either one of these or possibly both of them in the next hard fork. And just letting you know and letting the audience know that we will be discussing all the upcoming EIPs after the fork happens, and there will be a heated discussion probably about all of these EIPs.
Yeah. So let's roll through the Scourge a little bit. Right. So the MEV track is kind of it's a very important track, and I think it's one that kind of has grown the most, I would say, as the roadmap evolved, right? Like MEV has always been a thing, I guess, since Phil and Ari wrote the paper, but it's becoming to kind of dominate a lot of the narrative around the consensus mechanism lately, because it has such a big impact on the consensus layer. So I guess to kind of motivate the reason for addressing some of these issues, I always like to look at relay scan. So yeah, this kind of shows you the current block building landscape. Also mevboost.pix. Oops. Mevboost.pix. Yeah, this is all kind of like motivation for why we have to do something about the current MEV landscape. So right now we see that like around 90 to 91, even on some days, like 93% of blocks are built using MEV Boost. So that means the validator who proposes the block doesn't actually build it themselves. They outsource their block production to what's called the MEV Boost market. And that's what this relay scan is capturing here. So I guess we can kind of ignore the relays for now and focus on the builders and say that, okay, over the past 7 days, these 3 builders have built 45 plus 12, which is, I guess, 67, plus 27, that's what, 94, no, 84 or something. Yeah, whatever. A huge portion of the MEV Boost blocks are built by these top 3 builders. In particular, this Beaver builder has built 45% of the blocks. And remember, 93% of the blocks are built using this market. So that means, Beaver builder potentially is building between 35 and 40% of the blocks of all Ethereum blocks, every day, which is kind of a crazy amount. Additionally, we have censorship.pix, which shows that ultimately the builders are the ones who decide which transactions go in which block. And as a result, like a huge portion of the blocks built on Ethereum are censored. So 63% of all builders blocks are censored. So yeah, as a result, we get to this issue where, a few centralized actors that are highly sophisticated. These are kind of high frequency trading firms. They have like huge amounts of collateral and capital across different exchanges. They're actually like controlling the block production across the board for most of Ethereum blocks. Inclusion lists, which is kind of this first box on the MEV track, is a way of kind of constraining the action space of the builders, right? So right now, a validator has a single choice. They can say, hey, I either build my block locally and I don't get any MEV rewards, or I use this external MEV market, MEV Boost, and I get all of the MEV rewards of the external builders, but I don't get any control. I don't get any say over what transactions are included in my block space. So in some sense, the preference that I can express over my block space is very binary. It's just I control the entire block space, or I control none of it, right? Inclusion lists take this and kind of add somewhere right in the middle, which says, hey, I actually, as a validator, still want to use this external block market, but I'm going to say that there's some set of transactions that must be included either in my slot or the subsequent. Right. And so there's kind of now a way for me to express something about my block space. And this should, in theory, help kind of shift the burden of censorship resistance from the builders, which is where it lies right now, back to the validators. And the validators are always going to be the backbone of the network. That's like always what we're going to depend on for decentralization, for credible neutrality, for censorship resistance. So this is kind of like a natural stepping stone to kind of give some agency back without taking away the economic incentives of MEV.
Right. Just to not to interrupt you here, but the fork is happening in. Just a reminder for everyone, the fork is happening in around 17.5 minutes. And we have been joined by Carl from OP Optimism and ETH Dreamer, who is El Cordev. Hello, Carl, and hello, ETH Dreamer.
Hey. Why, hello.
Hi, Mark.
Howdy, guys.
Yeah.
There.
We're so happy to have you. So I wanted to check on with Carl on 4844 on something. I was asking Ben earlier about sharing blob space between Optimism and Base, and he said he would leave it to the Optimism devs to answer such a question. So can you tell us about that?
I mean, there is a kind of set of designs which we have not yet, obviously implemented, but just where it is possible to, batch submit for multiple different rollups at once, and then you get the compression benefits from, submitting blobs for all of these different rollups in a big chunk. Is this what you're referring to? Or sharing blob space in general, as in, of course, we're all going to be submitting blobs to 444.
Right. Great. Thank you. So I want to touch base continue that conversation with Mike Nader. But Mike, is it possible that we continue talking about the Ethereum roadmap after the fork? Does that work out for you?
I think
Yeah, for sure.
I think he just went. Be right back. Mike said he'll be right back. Oh, never mind.
I'm here,
Sorry.
I'm here.
Okay.
I just had to get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, 7 o'clock in the
Great.
morning. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe it makes sense to talk briefly about EPBS. You think that's good?
Sure.
Alan?
Please go ahead.
Cool. Yeah. So there's been like a lot of discussions around EPBS. Potes and Terrence have done really awesome work, kind of speccing it out, laying out the different design space and stuff. And the idea here is to try and bring some of this external block production market into the protocol, right? So currently, the MEV boost market that we were looking at before all happens kind of outside of the view of the core protocol. It happens using MEV boost, which is the software that the validator runs that is built and maintained by Flashbots. The MEV boost relay, which is another piece of software that is like a much more centralized kind of block transmission pipeline. And then the block builders all have kind of their own proprietary algorithms for building and producing the most valuable blocks. So the idea for EPBS, it's enshrined proposer builder separation, is that we take this block auction, and we take the ability for validators to sell their block space to builders, and we actually make it visible to the protocol, right? So this would involve kind of allowing the protocol to see the auction taking place and allowing the validator to commit to an external block production process through the actual consensus layer itself. There's a few reasons this is, I guess the main goal here, the main desiderata or desideratum, is to get rid of the relays. The relays are these centralized actors. They're like a single point of failure for a lot of these blocks that are flowing from the builders to the validators. And they're also just like, there's no clear funding mechanism for them to make money. So ideally, an EPBS mechanism would fully kind of remove the need for relays and would allow builders to trustlessly build blocks for validators. It would allow validators to trustlessly sell their block space to builders. There's a couple of reasons this is very difficult. I don't know if it's necessarily worth going into them in super detail, but yeah, basically the implementation that has been thrown around is this idea that basically the builders would be staked in the consensus layer, potentially. So now instead of just being a validator, you could also be a builder, right? And the capital requirements of staking a builder might be much higher than for a validator. So if a validator is 32 ETH, that's what we're trying to maintain, the solo staking ecosystem. A builder might have to put up like 1,000 ETH, right? That might be like $3 million. The exact number is kind of difficult, but basically that ETH is used as collateral to ensure that the builder, if the builder buys a block space and doesn't produce the block, they still pay the validator for the amount that they said they would.
Right.
There's a few different things that get complicated. Like you basically split the block into two. You partition the block into two different slots, essentially. One where the validator produces their beacon block, and one where the builder produces the execution block. And you need to come to consensus over both of those and you can't really do it simultaneously because the validator block has to come first, and then the execution block has to come second. So there's a lot that goes into the fork choice. There's a lot that goes into kind of the networking layer around when an attestation is cast. And then there's also a lot that goes into the actual staking mechanism itself, like how much do you stake the builders? How does builder slashing work, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very large change, but it would be very desirable to get rid of the relays. And one of the really cool downstream effects of this is actually EPBS gives the protocol what I like to call a MEV oracle, right? So the amount that the builder pays for the proposer slot is essentially the amount of MEV that the builder thinks they'll be able to extract minus some amount that the builder captures for profit, whatever. So now the protocol suddenly has a view of the amount of MEV produced during a slot, and you can decide what you do with that MEV. Currently, we pay that MEV to the validators. In theory, you could just burn that MEV directly, right? Which is kind of circling back to this validator economics track, which is how do we properly address these kind of centralizing and negative effects of MEV? One of the ways would be just destroying all the MEV kind of outright. So EPBS
right.
as a vehicle to achieve MEV burn, I think, is a really interesting path. And I guess I know I'm kind of running long here. One last thing to mention would be execution tickets. It's described here, and that's kind of another iteration of EPBS that looks slightly different because it allows proposers to kind of completely be removed from the block production pipeline altogether, and the protocol itself to sell block space to builders. And the protocol is kind of selling some amount of block space into the future for builders to bid and compete and auction for. And the validators themselves only essentially vote on the blocks that are produced. They are never responsible for block production themselves. Obviously, the huge downside here is that the validators will never be able to self-build blocks in this context, right? Because the tickets are the only rights to produce blocks. The validators only can produce this inclusion list object, and they can produce like attestation saying that they think this builder block is the head of the chain. But yeah, that's kind of, I would say, the TLDR of the MEV track.
Right. So before we jump to the Verge, I wanted to ask you, Mike, is it okay with you if we continue this talk about the Ethereum roadmap after the fork?
Yeah, sure. I'll have to run. Well, actually, I probably have to run after. I have to catch a flight.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe we'll just refer the interested listener to the Bankless podcast. Domathy and I went on Bankless, and it was a 2-hour, 30-minute kind of bonanza going through basically every box on this image. So yeah, maybe that's the right place to circle back.
Yeah, I'm sorry about this tight schedule, but like
no, okay.
It's we have a lot of guests, and we have a lot of questions and discussion points to talk to with everyone. But we of course love to have you. Thank you, Mike, for this amazing description of the Ethereum roadmap. And I wanted to talk to Coogan from ZK-Sync about what they're thinking of doing with blob-based opcode, the new opcode that was introduced for that is specific to blobs. Like, are L2s planning to start offering their own blob space, and then they would use this opcode in the same way that it's used on mainnet, or would they choose to replace this opcode with some other variable, or just keep the opcode and have it return a default value?
Yeah. No.
So sorry, Coogan.
Oh yeah, go ahead. No.
That, I just wanted to say that Stark City will actually be tuning into our live stream in 5 minutes. So we will be broadcast on Stark City, and we will join in the celebrations, hopefully, of a successful upgrade. But yeah, that's in 5 minutes. So please go ahead.
Very cool. Great.
Thank you, Anil. Yeah, Google, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thanks for that comment. I actually can't speak to the opcode itself, but I can speak to sort of broadly sort of the way that I do think it's an interesting sort of discussion around the blob data expiring and how we're addressing that as an ecosystem. It's been something that it's been sort of surprisingly hard to find data about who is going to be persisting data beyond the 2-week window that's dictated by the L1 if you're just a validator and can discard data.
Right.
We have a list going internally, and obviously we're going to store our data. But it is a very interesting discussion that I haven't seen happen as more prominently as I would have expected in the ecosystem. I'm sort of curious. So anyways, we can sort of discuss about that from a broader perspective rather than just the individual opcode.
I mean, yeah, sure. But like my question about that would be is that does ZK-Sync nodes have some kind of sort of P2P that they store the history of the chain there? Also, like, once ZK-Sync starts posting its data on blobs, are they gonna post transactions themselves? Because like as the ZK rollup, you don't really need to post the transactions. You can just post the state transition and the and the proof for that. So do you still plan to post the transactions on Blobs?
So we do not actually post transaction data on L1 right now. So we post state diffs like all ZK rollups. That's sort of the way that we get our optimizations. Obviously, optimistic rollups need to post all transaction data in some sort of form, whether it's compressed or in some other way. And this is why optimistic rollups are being seen as benefiting significantly from 4844 on the order of, say, 90% of fees. Obviously, we will as well. I think it's a little bit smaller, maybe on the order of maybe 60%, because obviously, data availability is a big part of our costs. And again, it varies from implementation to implementation.
So what data are we talking about here?
This is all state
from the point of ZK sync.
From the so the way that it's updated now, just for I'm generalizing for the call, but it's state diff. So when there's a transaction, when we have a batch of transactions that are committed to L1 and verified, and we execute those on L1, we're just updating the Merkle tree that is being stored on L1 on our state contract. So we're saying this account goes up by this amount, this other account goes down by this amount. We're transmitting state diffs. The reason why we do that is because we don't need to do the sort of game theory economics of fraud proofs or fraud windows for optimistic rollups because of the nature of zero knowledge proofs and the on-chain verified execution that happens there. And so that's why we just commit state diffs. So we provide the proof of the transactions, and we provide the implied state transitions, meaning the state diffs of that proof. And then that's verified on chain, and then those state diffs are applied to the accounts on L1. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, it does. Thank you so much. I think we can start talking, showing our preparations to monitor the fork. The fork is happening in 3.5 minutes, and we are joined also by Stark City London.
I hope you indulge in some culinary delights. I'm extremely excited because something big is about to happen. I hope you're also excited, but let's do a temperature check in the room. I'll say Dencun, you'll say upgrade, okay? Are you ready? Dencun? I mean, we could do a little bit better, I guess, right? So
should we say it here too?
Dencun? That's better. So I'm happy to welcome
Upgrade, there you go.
Henry and Derek back to stage. Please give them a round of applause.
Hey, all right, we're ready for Blobs.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to expect. It's not the first upgrade or the first fork I look at, but it's always feels super exciting, but at the end of the day, you're just behind a screen looking at a terminal, so.
Just going to be a header chain.
Exactly, it's like, oh wow, a bit changed, But at
Can
least
we
we're
talk
here
over the
and we can share
stream
with,
at all,
the
or we know
excitement
we're not
of people.
talking?
Indeed, yes.
It's really cool.
Looking forward to it. And yeah, if you guys saw my presentation earlier on today,
yeah, so
I'm really keen to see the cost reductions across the board, and then
mute
I'm
Stark
curious to
City
watch
London
it.
now.
But my understanding is that, as opposed to 1559 or the merge, that this is not going to be like, oh, look at it, like, right? And so it's a little bit, I think it's going to be a little bit of a anticlimactic moment, but I'm curious to hear. I mean, obviously it's going to be cool to see the fork choices and where the clients all come on. But in terms of, an aha moment, I'm curious to hear if other people feel like there will be one.
I don't know if we have some of the clients have a bit of an ASCII art, but I don't think Lighthouse does, at least.
Right, I think it's time to share.
I heard that there's a race from rollups to see who is the first that is going to activate blobs. So.
Oh, I know the answer to that.
Yeah, I think so too.
That was you laid that up for me nicely, Henry. Thank you.
Nice.
So I'm gonna start sharing the dashboards now.
Somebody. Hello,
so
can you hear us?
the fork is. Oh, hello. Hi. Oh, wait.
Hello.
Right.
We're in the Matrix.
We can look at the user. Oh, there's Kugan. Hey, Kugan. Oh, nice you. Hey.
Hi, Henry. How are you? Good to see you.
So every time I speak, there's a tunnel like, enter the vibe. Infinity mirror over the internet. We're surfing Dencun today. Nice. So we're here standing in the middle of a room where there's like probably like what, a good 50, 60 people. You guys, are you at home, I guess? Or no, in the void?
They are trying to make that's blockchain right there.
Something went wrong.
Just give me 1 second.
All right. Any good jokes, Derek?
No, nothing comes to mind.
I have a few in French, but they're in French. Anyone speak French here? Ah, nice. So,
okay.
Qu'est-ce qui est petit, carré, marron et qui meugle? Un caramel mou. There you go. All right.
It got a good reaction, at least from Antoine.
I see the live stream is back. Hello.
Hello.
Or not, actually.
So where are the Nethermind guys dialing in from? Are they all
I'm not
London
entirely
based,
sure.
or?
I think the people we saw here.
We're everywhere.
That's about it. I don't know.
Dencun live.
So do we have a countdown? Does anyone is anyone following the fork on his phone? Do we have an ETA for when this thing's? I'm sorry.
Is it live?
Yeah, can they hear us in that room?
Yeah, but my question is, when does the fork kick in?
Exact block.
About 3 blocks ago, 4 blocks.
Yeah, but yeah, I think about 3 blocks ago. Yeah.
Oh, nice. So do we do the little dance now?
It's already happened.
Blobs.
So beacon chain is not showing anything.
You know, while we're waiting, if anyone has a question, wants to make a comment.
We don't have any
Every
skip
Tuesday.
slots yet. That's a good sign. Everything seems to be proceeding nicely. People upgraded their nodes, it seems.
Yep.
Worldcoin looks good. So it means that there is no fork between clients.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Did you guys also?
We started. It's a bit awkward, but it started. So
we're just hanging out.
We're here
waiting.
Did you guys also see the huge
Looking
increase
at
in
the terminal, I think
transactions?
that's the first. You know, I had a bunch of awkward hardforks. This one, I couldn't look at it, but I heard from it. I heard
You
it
did
from
not.
the
Are
audience.
people already bidding blobs, Marius?
I can tell where
I
where
see
was.
first blobs and slots.
Nice.
Maybe
Maybe we
get
can talk a little
Voyager
bit.
or something on the screen to have a look at the
Could you share a link?
Yeah, I sent one of the
Maybe
links.
I don't know how familiar you are with the upgrade, so I don't have. I know the rough outlines.
Oh,
of
let
it,
me
But do
try.
you know how much more data will be like sendable to Ethereum post upgrade? Do you have an idea of the?
I
size
don't
or
know
not?
the percentages.
We
but
have blobs.
Oh no, I don't know. Do you have an idea of the percentages that we will?
No, I'm not sure in terms of.
All right, let's see
volume
the
of
first
data. I know
blob.
that
Can
the
we
cost is
can we
supposed to be
inspect the
reduced
first
because the
blob?
data will be kept for.
Oh,
less
those
time.
are on the Leshki,
I'm not entirely sure, like how
not
much.
on
Oh,
mainnet.
oh yeah, that's true.
Ah.
That's key. What?
What is it? What is it?
Okay.
Sorry, wrong thing.
Can you hear us? Hello.
But I see first
I
3
think
blobs.
blobs can.
Does it not come on until the block gets
I don't
No,
know
it
the
should.
exact number, but I was talking to the
I see
Pragma
first 3
guys
blobs
earlier,
at
and
least.
the interesting topic came up of.
So it seems the network is fine.
Seems like it's working.
And proposals are coming with no issues.
Like it went fine and there were no issues. That's good news.
Any attestation participation changes?
No skip slots, like
Nothing for now.
Well, the thing is,
Looks
when
very
those
smooth.
kind of hard forks happen,
That's cool.
you never really see if something goes wrong. You just miss a hard.
Henry's great. That's cool.
So I thought that beacon chain would have.
Yeah, got
Yeah,
other
I think they
blobs
have
on
a.
beacon chain. I send a link.
They do not.
There's a
How about
couple links
blob
in the
scan? Can we go back to blob scan? Maybe just
Yeah, blob scan is here, but nothing showing.
I send the link.
Yeah, there's a couple links in the Zoom.
New one. The Zoom.
Sure.
Ah, there we go. Oh, cool. Is that the first one?
Ah, okay. Now we see it.
Not sure if it's the first one.
Yeah,
I see at this slot there were first blobs posted.
So blobs are not being. So it's weird. I thought blobs would be hammered in the beginning since they would cost one way.
No, it's
Per
no.
blob.
I think when someone mentioned that earlier, I don't think that was actually correct. The blobs are fairly big, I think, and it's also like L2s are kind of staging out implementation. Not everybody's going to start jamming all their transaction data full of into the blobs, and not all networks are prepared for 4844. So a lot of them are, but not everybody. And it's very prudent if you're running an L2 not to just sort of start jamming everything into a blob from the jump, because what if it breaks? What if the fee market gets weird? What if it gets DDoSed in some sort of way? So I think there's a wait and see element to this where people are trying a little bit, but a lot of people are continuing to have their call data, at least for L2s, are continuing to have their call data streams because, why this is what I was saying earlier about.
We turned on blobs and Starknet.
Yeah, but how much, Ilya, did you do like 100% of all your data into blobs immediately, and you tried to just get as much as possible?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so we're doing, I think, we're targeting, we have, we're doing as much data as possible in the blobs, and we have a call data fallback as well. Ooh.
More blobs on more slots.
Maybe we can run radio off mainnet.
Sure. Right. So it seems that everything's going smoothly, but there are some reports of some nodes being stuck. Camille, can you show us is beacon chain proposing blocks just fine? It seems to be that yes, beacon chain is working just fine.
Yes, give me a second. It seems like we are not missing anything. At least it seems like.
I mean, attestation participation will show on beacon chain in a bit. Yeah, but we're not missing any slots.
Yeah, so the only question mark is why more builders that don't include the blobs, right? That's
Yeah, it seems like builders don't seem to be either builders are not occupied, like are not capable of including blobs, or there are no blobs on main.
Yeah, either or.
Which is unlikely.
Because I only see 3 blobs in those 2 blocks for now.
Does anyone have...
no, sorry. This one has 3 blobs too.
Hey guys, actually we were yesterday talking to the block builders on the stage at the event between Flashbots and Nethermind. We were talking about MEV, and many block builders said that they will be unwilling to include blobs at the beginning until they have a confirmation that they'll be able to pay for the latency difference. So it might be the reason why we're observing that there's not that much of the blob inclusion or no blob inclusion, which was like interesting thing that would only play on mainnet. So it means that, but the expectation is, and we were there, and Justin Drake was suggesting, and I think it's my belief as well, that as soon as there'll be understanding that we have to pay for that latency cost for the builders, the fee for the transaction, for the blob inclusion transaction, will go up significantly. And this will affect the general cost of the blobs, but we'll see how it plays on the market, really. But we should see solo stakers whenever the blocks are included from solo stakers. We should expect that the blobs will be there. So you may check actually who are the block producers, block builders, and see like where.
Is that why we're seeing commitments, but maybe not blobs, where the commitments are? No, I guess that doesn't work.
No, but like if that's the case, if the case that it is some builders are not supporting blobs, then you would see some blocks that are full of blobs, like with 6 blobs. But like till now, we're seeing 1 or 2 blobs in some slots. We're not seeing a lot of blobs. Or maxed out blob space, basically.
Wasn't someone just sharing that, 90% of block builders use MEV boost? So it is sort of on the builders for the most part. Oops.
Yeah, but I mean,
the MEV boost and the builders are probably prepared, but waiting for the whole thing to play out, which means that very often when you have a smooth transition, you just confirm that the technology works, that actually some blobs are included, and then the market adjusts. Like people start participating in the market because everyone was just a bit more afraid to maybe switch on everything on mainnet without confirmation. Very often you have large operators that say, okay, we have everything ready, tested, just switch it on after 30 minutes or after a few hours, or maybe we'll wait until there's confirmation that others switch it on successfully. So I think that that's what might be happening. And this might be that like L2s also are not switching on yet the usage of blobs.
We finalized the fork epoch, so that's a good sign.
That is absolutely most important is that we have everything operational, and if as long as the network will be progressing, this was probably the most important thing to confirm that we are safe.
So it is good that this hard fork is uneventful. Everything is working smoothly.
Oh, we didn't want fireworks for this one. Well, happy hard fork, happy blobs. I think you're on mute, Ahmad. You were just talking, I think.
Oh, I was saying that I think we finalized. So happy blobs.
There you go.
I wonder if anyone has like the base fee per gas, or like basically the price of blobs. It'd be interesting to watch. I'd love to see a graph of that.
I think there is one. Let me try to pull it up. Yeah. I think I'll share my screen. I can see it from Metrica. They have this. This is for base fee, block size. Oh, but they don't. This one is. Huh. They don't seem to have the data yet. Not just yet. Okay. Sorry. No data yet.
To quote a great quote from Tenet, it's the bomb that didn't go off. That's the bomb with the real power to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm observing that there is almost no blobs on the network, and when there is some blob, it's almost immediately included. So I expect the blob base fee to be simple one way, because not all the blob space is consumed.
Right. It's if anyone wants to post any memes on mainnet, it is the right time to do so.
Yeah, but you need to pay normal transactions fee,
Transaction
like
fees, yes,
1599.
yes.
So it's not that great that it's only this one way for blob data. It's additional additional one way.
Right.
Martin, can you share how many blobs are there in the mempool? Blob transactions? There is nothing really to share. It's 0, and sometimes it's 1, and then it's immediately included, and it's 0 again. Okay, so it's might not be the builders not being eager to add the blobs, just there are no blobs to add most of the time.
Yeah, looking at the Lighthouse metric, there is a total of 11 blobs till now on chain. Gossiped.
Oh, now someone sent some 5 new. I think it's up to 19 blobs seen.
Okay, seems we have a lot of headroom for Altus then.
So back in DevCon of in Bogota, I tweeted that 4844 was looking like a merge level effort, and I think that rattled a lot of cages. But I kind of feel like that was true at this time, because if you compare the timeline between, say, Amphora and the merge, and that DevCon to now, they're very similar, I think.
Now I see a block with 6 blobs. First block I see with 6 blobs. Can see it here. Full 6 blocks. Full 6 blobs block. Yeah. Full. And possibly they will continue to be full until the pool is empty. Oh, well, I guess it's empty already.
Yeah, and for some more context, it was 1 blob transaction with 6 blobs. So there was a single transaction with 6 blobs.
Single transaction, 6 blobs. Okay. Okay.
Martin, you're doing great as Blob Explorer.
I guess now we'll have some new block with a lot of blobs, because metric went up from 17 to 23. Not a lot, but much more. So one of the recent slots.
I wonder if that was all just garbage, because the KZG commitment improved so that those blobs is all 0.
Oh yeah, we have some heavy blobs here also. Again, good. Seems well.
Yeah, so what's interesting at this point, sending blob transaction with one blob has almost the same price like sending blob transaction with 6 blobs, as like regular fee is the same and the blob fee is almost 0.
So 6 blob transactions have more sense than 1 blob transactions.
Well, yeah, now that given that price of gas to push a transaction is higher than the price of gas for pushing the blobs themselves, but I bet that will change once L2s start pushing their blobs in.
It looks like we lost about 6-7% of validators.
Yeah.
So that's
just looking at that.
Pretty good.
How many? 6%?
6%.
6 to 7. Yeah.
Oh, no. So very good.
I think it's already down to less than 5.
Well, I guess there is that's it. We have blobs on mainnet, and we can start talking about what's coming next. Like, so I know for a fact that we have some EIPs that are already slated for inclusion for the next fork. Some of them, like for example, the EL triggerable exits, BLS precompile, and some others. And there are discussions about including other EIPs, and there are still discussions among core devs on which EIPs to include in the next fork, and which to not include. Marek, do you remember the list of EIPs that are slated for inclusion?
For next fork, sorry, wasn't following you, was checking that everything works well, and yes, everything works well, and we don't have many messages on Discord channel. This is also a good signal, so it means that everything works. And about next hard fork, so we have 3 EIPs already confirmed, and this is BLS precompile, so new precompile in EVM. There is EIP 6110, and this is about improving UX for deposits. And to be honest, it is more about removing some like that in between clients, because there is weird integration between execution clients and CL clients. And first of all, it will improve deposit UX, but on the other hand, it will simplify a bit things on client side. And there is a very interesting EIP 7002, which means that this is about improvement in withdrawals, because right now we have two keys on node. One key is hotkey, so it sign all attestations, etc. But there is one more withdraw key, and you can exit only with hotkey. So it means that if you delegate your money to some operator, you cannot exit if you do not pre-sign. And after this EIP, it will be possible to exit with your withdrawal key. So this is important improvement for staking.
So basically, like the smart contract that you're delegating to could possibly issue the command to exit your validator, voluntary.
Yes. And I think it will be also possible, like if you only have your withdrawal key, it will be possible to exit your validator. And so before it wasn't possible, right? Before this EIP implemented.
So
go ahead.
There is one more EIP, which is that was slated for inclusion called, which is EIP-3074 move committee index outside of attestation. And I want to take advantage of Mark being here with us on the call and ask him about this EIP. Mark, why did we have to move the committee index outside of the attestation? What benefit will that do to the beacon chain?
So I actually need to be across this more, but yeah, mostly I know this allows us to put more attestations, or well, actually I just have to be across this more. I don't want to speak like and say something that's not exactly correct.
That's totally fine. I understand that like it is hard to keep track sometimes of all these EIPs before actually implementing them.
I've been rushing to get a prototype of Max EB. So
correct. I mean, this is something that has been discussed before and being discussed still, like about Max AB and its effect on the chain. Why do we want Max AB though? What's the benefit of Max AB? I think Mike Nader said a little bit about that, about how it could reduce the number of validators, thus reduce the number of requirement for the attestations, etc. But like, doesn't it have other consequences, increasing Max AB?
So yeah, I don't know if we want to say it reduces the number of validators or more importantly, reduces the number of keys, because the stake remains the same. The idea is like, there's plenty of people on the network that have more than one validator worth of ETH that they want to stake. And right now, the only way for them to stake it is to just spin up 2 validators and therefore have 2 keys or N keys, depending on how much ETH they have. And that means that, say you have like, I don't know, 20 validators. That means the network has to aggregate your 20 signatures every epoch and so on. And there's really no reason that we should have to have that much work for that much stake. So we could just have one key, and then you could just have one validator with a larger stake. The issue is just that we have to be careful about how we do things like committee selection, so that you don't get outsized weight, and we just kind of redesign some things, because a lot of the math around those types of committee selection problems assumed that everybody had the same stake. And so, but anyway, this allows us to aggregate signatures, so we don't have to, the chain doesn't have to, or I should say combine signatures, so the chain doesn't have to aggregate as many signatures per epoch. And it is just a lot less computationally demanding on the beacon chain. And so we're especially hoping that large node operators and staking pools will consolidate their validators and probably even maybe there are some a good amount of solo stakers out there that have a good number of ETH that they can aggregate as well. So basically, it's like you fit more ETH in a smaller space. You might think of it that way. But it's also an alternative, I would say, to what you were talking about earlier, which is like an issuance curve adjustment, which I think, as we mentioned, that can be quite contentious. We've already seen a lot of pushback from both Lido and Rocket Pool, and I think a lot of people. So the point is that we have a limited amount of time to deal with this problem of the validator set growing too large. One of the things that we slated in this Dencun upgrade was a limit to the rate of increase of validators, and we did that to buy us some time. And so now we have to do something in order to use that time to address the problem before the validator set grows too large. And we basically have these two options, one being an issuance curve adjustment and the other one being max EB. And the nice thing is that max EB is significantly less contentious than an issuance curve adjustment.
Right.
And based on my, I've been implementing it over the last couple of days. And it really hasn't, and like most of the work is on the consensus side. And
Right.
it really isn't that tricky, honestly. It's been pretty easy thus far. So I guess maybe I'm pitching here, but I personally am a big advocate of max EB being in Electra.
Right. I mean, this also affects like little stakers. Like for example, if someone has 32 ETH running his validator at home, right now what happens is that any rewards from the validation goes into the withdrawal address. With max EB in effect, these once they accumulate to at least 1 ETH over the 32, which is the limit, it would start actually kind of accumulate, and it becomes, the rewards become cumulative basically, and basically you can stake 33 ETH and 43 ETH, etc. And so now, yeah, go ahead, please.
A good consequence of that is that because right now, if you're validating, we have this withdrawal queue where like we have an index that just kind of loops over the validator set and skims off the rewards and sends them to your withdrawal address. And so the question is, if rewards start accumulating on the beacon chain and you start getting compounded interest, then how do you get your rewards out? Well, max EB includes partial withdrawals that are initiated by the execution layer.
Right.
So,
something similar to how EL triggerable exits are going to be. It's going to be like EL partial withdrawal command. Right. So some I wanted to touch base also on some other EIPs that are being discussed for inclusion. Like for example, I've heard like there is a lot of ruckus on especially X and Twitter about 3074 or the other competing EIPs that will kind of improve the UX on Ethereum for everyday users. Anyone wants to comment on these EIPs and discuss them?
Could you repeat your question, Ahmad? Sorry again,
I was asking everyone in the call about like there are a lot of discussion among especially, and like there's a lot of ruckus that's happening right now on Twitter about 3074 EIP-3074 or other competing EIPs that are supposedly to that are supposed to improve the user experience for users on Ethereum. So whether allowing sponsored transactions in externally owned accounts, or allowing batching transactions on externally owned accounts, or even enshrining 4337 in the protocol. There is a lot of discussion around this. What do you feel like um, um, the most like EIP that is the strongest among these ones, and like supported by the core devs?
I know, Ahmad, that you are a fan of 3074, but my perspective is that generally I don't see consensus, and this is concerning, because we could implement any EIP for sure, but as long as we do not have consensus among core devs, I don't know if it does make sense.
Right, right. So I wish I wanted to also switch to the consensus layer side again with Mark on touching on an inclusion lists and EPBS, because there was discussions between Mike Nader pushing for inclusion list to be included, and some core devs from the present team. Unfortunately, they're not here with us anymore. To that they are very they have strong opinion that we should probably start thinking about including EPBS in protocol.
Yeah, certainly.
What do you feel about that?
In terms of where I feel the sentiment is I mean, definitely we're not on EPBS for the Electra fork, but it's definitely a very strong consideration for the next fork. I've been following EPBS research for a while, and there's a very, very broad space of proposals and trade-offs that will need to be, I think, more understood along the wider community. So, I mean, but I think the Prism team, and especially POTUS, has been pushing this. They are right to push for us to bring our more attention to EPBS, so that we can kind of discuss which trade-offs we want to go with.
Right.
And the one, I think perhaps the core issue here has to do with that if post EPBS we continue to allow local block production, then there's no way that we can guarantee that that no one goes out of protocol and uses a relay. And
right,
based on the latency trade-offs, there can always be an incentive to do that. So the only real way we can ensure that people don't go out of protocol is to not allow local block production and require all the builders to actually be registered in the protocol. And then in order to ensure that not every validator just immediately registers themselves, that means you're going to have a good amount of collateral. So, and kind of the contention there is that this is going to obviously centralize block production. Because right now we have this nice property where if you snap your fingers and all the validators or all the builders went offline, Ethereum wouldn't even necessarily miss a block because it would just revert to local building right away. And so if we go with what POTUS is strongly advocating for, that wouldn't be true. But then again, the long-term roadmap for Ethereum is you will end up with centralized block production and highly decentralized block validation. And there's just, because of MAV and things like sharding, there's just no way around that.
Right. Right. Yeah. But what about inclusion list though, which is being pushed as the easier and more refined spec kind of EIP to be included? I've heard that even though that this inclusion list is spec is kind of refined and like almost ready for implementation, that there are some other suggestion on how to do inclusion lists or doubts on how the current spec is mapped.
Yeah, and I know there's kind of two trains of thought. Generally, like basically this fork or the next fork is basically where it goes. And me personally is I would think it would fit better in the EPBS fork. But again, I've been mostly working on MaxEV and ensuring that we can persuade enough people. If we can do MaxEV and inclusion list, I'm fine with that. I'm just making sure that MaxEV gets in.
Right. Thank you, Mark. I'm wondering if Igor is with us. Igor, you're with us? Okay, I'm guessing not. So I think I think we can conclude our stream here and thank everyone who have attended. Thanks everyone who have watched us, and happy Blob fork. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank you.
Blob.
Thank you.
Ahmad, great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a very good day. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.